With this time, I go for mine. I get to shine. Now throw your hands up in the sky. Go for mine. I get to shine. Now throw your hands up in the sky.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another This Week in Startups. I am actually really excited and a little bit nervous about today's guest. This is the first guest we've had that I've got actually butterflies about. Totally honestly, like I have all of these great CEOs on, but they're sort of like me. But a poker star is just like, for me, that's like Michael Jordan being on the program. But anyway, I'm going to do a nice professional read here. This is a first for This Week in Startups. We actually prepared and have a teleprompter. So here it goes. My guest today is sometimes referred to as the best female poker player in the world after studying English and psychology at Columbia University and the University of Pennsylvania and earning money on the side playing in local poker rooms. She left school on the encouragement of her brother and soon became one of the circuit's top players. She finished 13th in her very first World Series, took in $70,000 in her first month of professional play, and has taken home a bracelet at the 2004 World Series. That year, she also claimed the winner-take-all prize at the Tournament of Champions. In addition to her accomplishments in card playing, she is also a noted writer, philanthropist, instructor, blogger, and television personality, most recently as a contestant on Donald Trump's Celebrity Apprentice. Please join me in welcoming the Duchess of Poker, Miss Annie Duke.
Oh, no, don't ever use that.
No?
No.
Strike
Duchess
that.
of Poker, strike that.
Strike it.
That, I gotta tell you, that nickname was given to me by somebody who came in and decided he wanted to be the agent to like the poker people, and he said everybody had to have a nickname, and never asked my permission, and put that up there, and I was like, oh my God, that's so I like just Annie Duke. I don't need a nickname, thank you.
No nickname.
No
Strike
nickname.
it.
My brother has the nicknames for the family.
You know, it's so funny because when I did the test read of this, I said, I've never heard her referred to that. Is that actually
because
my
I
nickname?
really try to squelch it. Like, I don't
Really?
ever use it. I never refer to myself as that. It's kind of a leftover.
You also have a great name, Annie Duke.
See, you know what? Because my name obviously was Annie Lederer.
Right.
And then I got married to a Duke. So I got, obviously, Annie Duke. And then when I got divorced, I stayed Annie Duke because I was like, who's changing that name?
It's the greatest name ever.
It sounds like
a superhero.
Wild West. Like I was
Yeah,
playing
guns,
with like Wild Bill
everything.
Hickok or something. I like it.
So you've had an epic career in poker. Now you've sort of become a brand. Like a lot
I guess,
of.
yeah, something like that, which is good because it means I don't have to work as hard at the poker.
Yeah. So I mean,
honestly.
is this actually a problem when your poker career gets so big that now you're not able to play poker, or you're a target like in the poker community? Like when people get at a table with you, they want to take out Annie Duke.
Well, I mean, okay, so it definitely creates interesting scenarios at the table because people definitely react to you differently.
Right.
But I don't consider that a problem or not a problem because I feel like everything at the table is about problem solving. And in reality, no matter who you are, it's about navigating how people are reacting to you and kind of manipulating their reactions to you in your favor. And
Right.
obviously, if you become a well-known poker player, people are going to tend to have reactions to you that are different than they used to. But if you're good, you can navigate those reactions just fine and use those to your advantage as well. And you just have to change some things about the way you play. And good poker players are flexible players. So
Right.
I don't play the same way that I did 5 years ago when people were just treating me as a dumb broad, you know?
Right.
So,
Actually, we're underestimating you probably.
Right.
And now
so-
they give you too much credit, maybe.
well, some people, you have to know which one, because some people give you too much credit, and then some people just want to be in a hand with you.
Right.
And so you have to understand which kind of person you're dealing with, because obviously type 1 you can play very aggressively against and bluff very easily.
Sure.
Type 2 is never folding anything because they want to be like, oh, I picked off Annie Duke, I
Right.
beat her.
Showdown.
Right, and interestingly enough, that group of people doesn't care which way it goes. Like if they get knocked out, they don't care because they're like, oh, I got knocked out to Annie Duke, that's a story. But if
So
they
they
beat
might be
me in a
chasing
hand,
something.
right? If they beat me in a hand or they bluff me or any of those things, they get to tell that story too.
Right.
So there's really no downside to them
Right.
for being kind of maniacal. So you have to kind of realize who those people are, and those kinds of people you really have to just kind of run the nuts into.
Right.
And then the people who are just scared of you. And what's interesting about those people is they'll usually say it out loud.
They're like, I don't want to play with Annie.
Yeah, they'll be like, oh my
I'm
God,
done.
you're at my table? This is horrible. Do you have to be at my table? Oh no. And they'll say those things out
Yeah.
loud. Those people you can go after. So you just have to kind of pick your spots.
I had the same experience at the WPT Celebrity Tournament last year. I sat down at a table, and it was Miami John.
Yeah.
Who's supposedly a great player.
He's a great player, particularly like the 8 or better games, like Omaha, Stud 8 or better. He seems to make every single final table.
And at the other end of the table was Barry Greenstein.
Very
and then
good
next
player.
to him was Buzzsaw Alan Buzzsaw
Oh,
something.
Chainsaw? You don't have to worry about
whatever.
him. He's
Chainsaw.
so tight.
No, I know. So I sort of got him, but then I saw Barry Greenstein, and I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then I wound up with my donkey play, my kings to Miami John's aces, and I spiked a king.
Yay.
Right.
That's the most fun.
Ridiculous. So there's so many things to talk about. I wanted to start with how poker is changing and the sort of two moments in poker that are sort of big. You had this major boom, I guess, that occurred in 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004. And then you had the bust, I guess. It's maybe because of the online poker getting cut back a little bit. How has the game changed during these two periods? It feels so much more international now. The World Series of Poker, it felt like half the people at the table had an accent, for example.
Well, first of all, the WSOP has always been really international. Even in the 90s when I was playing and nobody even knew that this world existed, it was very international. Lots of British people would come in for it. What you're getting now that you didn't get before, you get a lot of Brits and Australians and French. So those three groups are always very well represented at the WSOP. What you've added in now is more Germany and the Nordic countries. Right. And the Russians. So we never had any Russians at all, and now it's just Russia everywhere.
Exactly.
So that's definitely been an addition. But basically, I think there's actually two things that happened at the same time that all kind of converged on 2003. So in 2000, 2001, 2002, we had the development of internet poker. And that was really huge for people like that were, for example, in the Nordic countries, because obviously you're talking about people who don't have a high density of population, not a lot of poker going on live there.
Sure.
Dark for a good part of the year, like really
cold.
ideal, cold.
Yeah.
So very ideal for people to sit at home and actually practice this game, and it really brought it to places that poker hadn't been before. So that was really big, and it brought it at a level where people could really learn in their homes without all of that sort of intimidation factor of sitting down at a live table and worrying about what people think about you, and it took a lot of the social pressure off. So that was big, and then you had, at the same time, this whole card camera, ESPN coming in and starting to film, that happened sort of at the same time. So what you get is, as these internet sites are starting to become very successful, you know, in that 2002, 2003 range, then all of a sudden in 03, Moneymaker wins the WSOP from an internet site on ESPN. Right. And that's that. So, but you need both of those things to happen, because you really need the internet sites to be funneling in these people. So if you don't have the internet sites and just Moneymaker wins, nothing happens. You don't end up with a boom.
And so the television boom plus internet boom equals
what ended up happening.
Footprint.
Right. And then so now you see, you know, 839 people when Moneymaker wins, which still was a huge boost, by the way, which was solely because of the internet. So for example, in 2000, when I came in 10th, there were 512. And that still felt like a lot, but it was 512. So you got, you know, again, 30% as much again within that short period of time, which was pretty amazing, because that didn't really grow that much. So in 94, the first year I played, there were about 300, to give you an idea of the rate of growth. So from 94 to 2000, we only went up 200 players.
Right, so it's growing 10% a year, 20% a year, and then all of a sudden, boom, it goes
up. So now it
up.
goes to 839 all of a sudden from 612 the year before. So that was a huge jump. Now 839 to 2,700.
Wow.
I think it was 2,766. If I may be mistaken, you should ask at Mahalo.
Yeah.
I think it was 2,766, but I'm not totally positive. In 2004, to boom, it goes up to 8,000. I think it was about 8,900.
Wow.
By the time 06 rolls around. So in 06, I came in 88th and made as much money as I did coming in 10th in 2000. So that gives you an idea of the growth. Now what happens is in 06 is UIGA passes, and now it pulled back into the 5,000s, and it's pretty much stayed there. So it's kind of weird, because it's like you could sort of say, well, that's a bust, but is it really?
No, it's still net ahead,
right. Because in 2000 we were still in 2000 we were at 512. In 2003 we were at 839. Now we're still in the 5,000s.
And last year was 6,500.
Yeah.
And they were turning people away on day 4.
They were, because poker players procrastinate. And everybody got so mad at Jeffrey Pollack for that, and I was like, are you kidding? You had 4 days to sign up.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either. I played day 3. What did you play?
I played on day 3 as well, and I actually had an interesting
was there strategy to that? Because I had no strategy.
No, well, my problem was that I was really sick. And so I was trying to get I was trying to wait as long as I could and get better.
Yeah.
And finally I decided, well, I'll just play on day 3 because then I'll have day 4 off and day 5.
Yeah,
which
that's
was
what I
the
thought
day
would be a
off.
good idea to take the day off.
But, you know, it's that interesting thing because I don't think there's any other tournament that I would play as sick as I was. But in that one, I think I was still plus equity, so I played. But then, of course, you can result and be like, well, that was stupid because I actually took some bad beats to get knocked out, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I was so sick. And then I was sick for, you know, 2 weeks afterwards, so I don't know.
A lot of people got sick.
Yeah.
And my wife goes, you know, you don't look so good. You're getting sick? And I said, no, I'm not getting sick. I can power through it. You know, you guys are. And she's like, I think you should get something. And she calls a doctor, comes to our hotel room, gives me a, you know, antibiotic, Z-Pack, whatever. Boom, I take it. I was fine. All my friends got sick.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah,
Something, some bug
there was
going
something
around.
because Joe Seabuck had it.
Yeah.
And he had it he didn't start feeling better almost until like the last day or 2 that he played. He obviously came in 50 something. So he made a really, really deep run in that. But
so this was my first World Series of Poker main event. How is that event different than, say, just a normal tournament? I mean, the quality of players, the number of players, strategy, it's deep stack.
Yeah, I mean, most normal tournaments, well, I mean, the World Series in general is different because, you know, their no-limit tournaments will get 2,700 or 3,000 players at the lower buy-ins, at those 1,500 buy-ins. But normally when you're talking about a $10,000 event, you know, you're talking usually between 300 and 600 players. And so this is an event, obviously, that has 6,000.
Right.
So the sheer number is amazing, just in terms of, like, obviously the energy and the prize pool and all that stuff. The quality of player is terrible. In general, over the whole field, because obviously when you bring 6,000 people together, you know, when you have like the LAPC, you know, which will get 500 or 600 people, it's the 500 or 600 best players in the world. Now you bring those over into the World Series, and then there's 5,400 other guys. Right. So the equity in that tournament is bigger than it is in any other tournament for anybody who's
a lot of dead money.
A lot of dead money.
Right.
And I think also there's just that thing. It's like the World Series of Poker. So there's this kind of electricity and this excitement. And, you know, as an example, my schedule's a little out of control, so I think I'm going to miss now the 15K Bellagio. I would never, I don't care how out of control my schedule was. Like, I was deathly ill, I still played in that thing. Like, you just don't miss that event. I had one year in 2002, I wasn't happy with the way that the WSOP was being run. That was the second to the last year, I think, that the Bainans were running it. So Becky Bainan was Jack Binion's sister. There was a big internal family fight. The control of the Horseshoe in Las Vegas ended up going to Becky Bainan and her husband, Nick. Jack took over the rest of the Binion's properties elsewhere, like down in Tunica and Chicago and whatnot, and that was kind of the agreement that happened. And I don't think that it was a good regime change. And so in 2002, partly because I'd had a baby 6 weeks before it started, but also partly because I was very unhappy with what was happening there, I played not a single event, but I still came and played the main event. I still played the main event because you have to, and I think that people feel that, like even the pros get excited about it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I mean, it was my first time, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing!"
It's right, and it's just
so
like everybody's
exciting.
like, "Oh, it's the biggest thing of the year."
So you have $30,000 in chips.
Yes.
And some
really good structure.
Yeah, and some maniac in the second level or third level pushes all in with these chips, and you have kings or aces. The right move is to
call.
Really.
For sure.
You just think they have nothing.
Well, I mean, look, it's a mathematical question. So you're a math guy, right?
Right, sure.
So you're before the flop. This is a question that gets asked all the time. Let's say that you have aces. You know, people are like, okay, they push in for the whole 30,000 stack. Do you put your whole 30,000 at risk? Well, you know, the fact is that the very best situation that they can be in is having something like 6-7 suited out of your suits.
Right, which they don't have.
Right, but let's just say they do.
Right.
Okay, so now you're a 3-1 favorite.
Right.
That's your worst case scenario,
right.
By the way. A lot of times you're a 4.5 to 1 favorite, and then you get all the situations where they actually have an ace in their hand.
Right.
Right, where you're just a monster favorite. So let's think about how much better than the field do you have to be to give up something where you know that you're a 4.5 to 1 favorite to double up. I mean, it's a ridiculous number. And I know that Phil Hellmuth likes to talk about, well, I can get my money so cheap other ways.
Right.
And he very famously had a situation where he came up to me and told me a story I think it was in 2000, where he said, well, I was in this hand and I raised with jacks. And this guy moved in. Oh, no, he said I raised with queens. He said I opened the pot with queens and this guy moved in. This was on day 1 of the World Series. And I knew he had jacks, he said. I just knew for a fact he had jacks, so I folded. And I was like, what? Huh? What? Wait.
So he just
a second.
didn't want his tournament to end early.
No, it wasn't that. He said that he felt like he was so much better than the table that he didn't need to put his money at risk like that. And by at risk like that, you meant you were like an 82% to win the hand. Like, I didn't even understand. Well, anyway, so now Phil mucked his queens face up, and the other guy mucked sevens face up.
Oof.
As he got them. So he didn't have jacks. I mean, I guess there was a little disconnect in the looking into the soul, but he was right that he had an overpair. And he still folded, and he still to this day feels like that was correct. But I think that we figured out that you'd have to be, my brother and I figured out that he would have had to be over 20 times better than the people at the table.
To have a better moment to do it.
To not take that risk. It was something like that. I can't remember, but we figured it out, and it was some ridiculous amount. And of course, no, you can't be that. You know, I mean, if you take somebody like Phil Ivey, who's so amazing, you know, I'd be willing to give him 6 times, somewhere between 6 and 10 times par. So he's not even good enough to do that. And he wouldn't, by the way. If he had queens and somebody moved in and he was pretty sure they had jacks, he would call. So, you know, just to say that you're, you know, over 20 times par is crazy. So, and I know I'm not 10 times par. So if someone pushes in and I have aces, I'm sorry,
You're calling.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
You
And
know,
if you get knocked out early, you deal with it.
Whatever, you just move on. I mean, it's not like you did anything wrong. You had aces.
Right. But you got knocked out early, so.
So what? You had aces.
Yeah. So you could have won. So I took your course, which was amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
And I took the cash game course that you teach. And now you actually teach the course.
I do.
Which is very cool. You have maybe, how many people there? 50 people there? Was 3 tables?
I think it was about 50 people. It depends on the interestingly enough, the ones in LA don't do as well as the ones at Caesars, and I'm always surprised by that because there's such a big poker playing community with the Commerce and the Bike and whatnot. And we've done 2 at the Bike. I did a tournament academy 2 years ago, and then I did this one last year. And each time it's only been between like 40 and 50 people, which always surprises me. I always think that there would be more people coming. But.
Well, just think about the amount people are dunking off, you know, like every day. I just thought $2,000 for this class or whatever it is, $1,800. If you're playing at a $200 or $300 or $400 game, it's worth taking this because
everybody says so. Everybody who takes it ends up saying like, "It paid me back." Like
I absolutely did for me. I went and played in the cash game afterwards, and I just made like 1 or 2 changes to my game based on it. And if you've read the books and all that kind of stuff, and you listen to everything, I think you might have 60% of the class you know, or you're aware of 70%, but then that other 30% is so critical.
And I don't think it's bad to hear the 60% like in person, where you can have a dialogue about it either. It's like
debate it.
Yeah, I mean, I think too often poker players feel like they already know it, and I think that's a really bad place to be in for anybody, really. I mean, whether it's poker or life or business or whatever it is, when you start feeling like you know it and you can't learn from your peers, particularly peers who are successful. I think you get into really big trouble. And it's interesting because sometimes I go and I teach those classes and I have people getting into very serious arguments with me, but not arguments which are like idea exchanges, arguments which are like, I'm right and you're wrong kind of arguments. And I'm always very shocked by that because I'm like, well, you're not even a winning player. Like, why are you arguing this with me? Why don't you just listen and go, and maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. You know, it doesn't have to work for everybody, but I would think you would keep an open mind, you know.
People seem to be not very objective about their gambling, especially the people who are coming, people who are gamblers seem to have the least objectivity of anybody about their own game and ability to self-analyze.
Well, I actually think that's something that I was talking about actually when we did the event for Decision Education Foundation, which is a charity that I'm on the board of. And I always say, and it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but it's really true, that I've spent my life taking advantage of people who make very bad decisions. So I'm giving back through this educational foundation, doing curricula for not just K through 12, but also parents and adults who want to improve their critical thinking and decision-making skills. And as you know from taking my course, my take on poker is a very decision-based take, which obviously includes a lot of math, but you have math and decision-making anyway. So it's very much about constructing proper trees and understanding what the consequences and what the probabilities of different branches of the tree are. So at any rate, I was talking about this because this has been something that's really been in my head lately, which actually started from a Twitter conversation I had with Kathy Ireland, of all people.
Interesting.
This was like the weirdest thing ever. But I've been thinking a lot about privatization and socialization of results lately. So this is really a pervasive problem. So basically, if we think about it, we've got this axis, which is the skill luck axis, right? And this can apply to anything, not just poker, but I'll talk about it poker related. So you have the skill versus luck axis, which is, how much of what's happening to you is skill based, how much of it what's happening is luck based. So you can think of the luck side of this axis as the social side, right? That these are things that are in the world that are happening to you, and the skill side is the private side. So that's the privatization, socialization. Then you have the result, win, loss, right? And what you find from poker players, and this is such a huge problem, is that when they have good results, they privatize them. So they're using that piece of the cell. So we can think of this as win-loss. This is skill and luck, so they're over here.
So they're attributing the good stuff to their internal ability.
Exactly. When they lose, they're down in this quadrant. So they're saying, oh, I got so unlucky, all of these bad things happened to me. And they're losing these two cells. Now, obviously, if we created a scatter plot of all the results you've ever had in poker, it would actually be scattered across pretty evenly across the whole thing. That sometimes when you lose, you played perfectly well, but you just had your aces cracked by fives. And sometimes when you lose, you actually did some really stupid things. So we're going to fill up both quadrants. Ditto for when you win. Sometimes you win because you have kings against aces.
And you spike it.
And okay, great, wonderful.
I'll take it.
And sometimes when you win, it's because you actually played well, and we assume that we can scatter across all. And if you don't actually properly look at those results in retrospect, then you can't actually improve your game.
And two of those quadrants you have no control over.
Right, exactly.
So you might as well look at the one that you do have control over.
Exactly.
Because you can change it.
Well, and this is one thing that I say that's kind of interesting. Is when people ask me how to control tilt, what I say is, well, controlling tilt has to do with understanding what results really are for and what they're there for. And when we look at the result of a hand, you should ask yourself one question first. Was the result in my control? That should be your first question.
Put it in the different quadrants.
Yeah. If the answer is no, the result wasn't in my control, then why do you care? And interestingly enough, those are the results that put people on tilt. And I said, well, why do you care? Yeah, because if it wasn't in your control, then why are you upset about it? If you didn't do anything wrong and your decision-making process is really good, which is what is going to cause you to win in the long run, then why do you care if there was some result that was out of your control? If I have aces and you have fives, and I move in and you choose to call me with the fives, and you hit it, why do I care? I made a very good mathematical decision and a very money-making decision, so I can now move on. If it is in my control, then you don't tilt about it, because what you do is you say, okay, it was in my control, this bad result. Now let me figure out what it was that I did, and now let me change it. And once you get into that perspective, it actually stops you from tilting. And again, that works well whether you're at the poker table or not. So what I find in real life, whether it's in business or in people's management of their personal lives, is that they're very often getting very upset about things that they can't control. Other people's behavior, people doing stupid things, whatever it might be.
Randomness.
Complete randomness, because we know that walking down the street is random. I mean, it's a skill game with random elements, right? Taking a shower is a skill game with random elements. Bad things can happen to you. So people really focus on the stuff they don't have control over, and they allow it to tilt them, which is really amazing, because we should be focused on the things we do have control over. And the problem is that when we allow the stuff that we don't have control over to get us emotionally upset, then we're very bad decision makers on the control stuff, and it starts to spiral out of control, right? And I always think that that's
also
really interesting.
Tilt.
Also known as tilt, and obviously for poker players, it's such an important concept that we have a singular word for it, which is tilt, which you don't actually see in other things. You have to sort of express it conceptually. So when people ask me, like, I'm very well known as someone who basically never goes on tilt. So people are always asking me about this. How come you're never upset? How come when you walk up to the table, it's hard to tell whether you're winning or losing, and you kind of play the same no matter what? And my answer is because I'm very aware of what I have control over and what I don't. And that's really just the simple answer. Do I have control over it or don't I? And that has to do with me really taking a very hard look at this quadrant. So one thing I don't do is, like, if you read my Twitter stream, you'll never see a bad beat story from me on there, because I don't think that they're really useful.
What's the point?
What's the point? But when I walk up to Eric Seidel or a Howard Lederer or somebody like that, what you'll very often hear me say is, I want to ask you about this hand that I played, and I might very well have won it, but I'll say, I think I played it really badly. Let me ask you about it. And so for me, the discussions that I'm always having are not venting discussions, they're productive discussions. And that's, I think, how you get better. So that has to do with this privatization, socialization thing, that when we're talking about results of our own, we tend to privatize them if they're good,
Yeah.
and socialize them if they're bad.
Yeah, and psychology would be attribution theory.
Right.
And people's happiness is largely driven by this. I mean, if people
Yes.
look at their life and say, oh my God, the reason I got pulled over is because, you know, the cop's an idiot or whatever,
Right.
and not because you were speeding like a maniac and you had control over it, it's sort of freeing for them to continue bad behavior.
Right, and what's interesting though is that it's a very short-term strategy.
Right.
That if you really want to achieve long-term happiness and long-term success, that's a very bad thing to be doing.
Sure.
To be privatizing good results and socializing bad results is very unproductive, and it's actually less likely to yield good long-term results. So the Kathy Ireland thing, because it's so weird that this
Yeah.
started from Kathy Ireland, right?
Wait, was she on The Apprentice with you? Is
No.
that how you know her?
No, so
There's
she-
some other supermodel on there or something. You were great on that, by the way.
Thank you. Brandy Roderick
It's so great
was
to
on
see
there
an
with me.
intelligent, just as a total aside, to have somebody who's like very intelligent or, you know, just brilliant, and, you know, frankly, on that show with a bunch of numbnuts. It was just fantastic.
It was fun for me. I got to say, you know, the most interesting thing on there, before I get back to the Kathy Ireland thing, was when we were asked to write the jingle, I was completely panicked because I have no musical talent.
Right.
And people say to me, well, how did you end up beating Clint back writing that jingle? And I said, because I dawned on me about 2 hours into the challenge that it was a branding challenge. It wasn't a music challenge.
Right.
And the minute that I understood that it was a branding challenge,
Right.
I was fine. And what was interesting was the comments at the end of that were, when they talked about Clint Black's jingle, they said it was a very nice song that never mentioned the brand.
Right.
They said Annie's mentioned the brand 3 different times and then
Right.
hit all the brand messages: convenience, health, fast, moms, kids,
Yeah.
tasty, and trust.
Right.
And they said she got all of that into this thing
Right.
because that was this moment where I said, you know what, he's going to write a song.
Right.
And in my interviews, they said, do you think you can win? And I said, I think it depends on whether he realized that he wasn't writing a song or not. And
Right.
they didn't use that because I'm not sure the producers understood sort of
Yeah.
the depth of what I was saying.
Right.
But it had dawned on me that day, and I said, it depends. If he knows he's not writing a song, I might be in trouble because his music will be better than mine. But if he thinks he's writing a song, I'm good to go.
This is where reality TV sort of falls down, is that whenever something intelligent happens, like where somebody's
they don't
gaming and they're
show
like,
it.
Jesus, we should cut this because this is too hard to
This
understand.
is too hard to understand.
And then
Right?
they lose
So
me.
Kathy Ireland was
Yeah.
on a different reality
Right.
show called Dancing with the Stars.
Sure.
So this is how this came up. This was a really weird thing. So I don't watch Dancing with the Stars. I just want to
Right.
put that out there. But I walked into the office, and I guess the TV wasn't in ABC, so I happened to watch 10 minutes of Dancing with the Stars. And it was 10 minutes where Kathy Ireland had just finished her dance and was now being interviewed by Samantha Harris, the host. And Kathy Ireland had done really poorly on her dance. So the host said to her, what do you want to say about what the judges said? And she said, well, a few weeks ago I couldn't walk in heels, but now I danced in heels, which proves that all things are possible with God. Now, yeah.
Wow.
So, exactly. So
It's just what I thought.
exactly. So I now tweeted, Kathy Ireland said this, and she said, this proves that all things are possible with God. I'm really glad that he's paying attention to Dancing with the Stars, which of course it was Twitter, so I said DWTS.
Yeah.
Dancing with the Stars, and not the other things like Darfur and Iraq.
Yeah.
So that's all. So it was just kind of obviously I was being facetious, but
Yeah.
but I felt like I was saying a true thing.
Sure.
You know, that I would hate to think that he was really making sure that she could dance, and at the same time allowing
Yeah,
over
genocide.
2 million people to be displaced and 500,000 people to be the victims of genocide
Right.
in a country that I actually have a lot of care about, and then not to mention Iraq.
Yeah.
So anyway, the next morning I wake up, and to my surprise, she has responded.
Really?
Yes, on
Wow.
Twitter to my comment.
God doesn't love you?
Well, I already know that.
Yeah.
But no, what she said was, why? She said, why are you degrading my faith or something like that? And I said to
geez.
her, right, well, no, I responded back to her because I wanted to have an intelligent conversation about it. Emily Gillette really enjoyed. So Emily Gillette is Penn Gillette's wife. And obviously has a very strong opinion about these things and was really enjoying watching this conversation. But so she called me up during the day about it. But anyway, so I responded. I said, well, I don't understand. Why can't you just take credit for the hard work that you put in? And why do you feel like you have to give credit to God for that? Why don't you credit yourself? So she then responded back and said, well, obviously I put in hard work, but people of faith, so she was speaking to all people who believe in God, I guess, people of faith credit God for all good things and put him before their husbands, and their husbands are before their children. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So then I wrote back and I responded back and I basically said, well, okay, but if you're going to give credit to him in all seriousness, I said,
Yeah.
I'm not being sarcastic
Right.
anymore. So it took a couple of tweets for me to get this across.
Right.
I said, I'm not being sarcastic anymore, but if you're going to give him credit for your dancing, don't you also have to give him credit? And now I said, for the Inquisition, the
Right.
Holocaust, Darfur, and Iraq. Now,
Right.
obviously, I very specifically
Right.
picked some things that have to, I said, no, I didn't use Darfur. I said the Inquisition, the Holocaust, the Crusades,
Yeah.
and Iraq. So I chose things that are religiously
Yeah.
based. So she now wrote back to me and she said, God is responsible for all good things.
Man for the evil things.
She said, but he created free will. So what you're talking about are things that were man's free will. So man's responsible for those.
I see. So
Okay.
man's responsible for the bad things. And when we do good stuff, we're not responsible.
Right. So now I didn't want to, so now all I wrote back was that seems really convenient. But
Sure.
then I called up my friend Ray First, who you also know, who's wonderful, and I literally was screaming into the phone, and I said, that's the most solipsistic thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, all frogs are named George, you know, here's an animal named George, therefore it's a frog. Okay,
Yeah.
yes, that's completely true.
Yeah.
If you assume the premise. So I
Right.
said, I said, I can't believe that this is so ridiculous because, again, if we think about the quadrants, right, we've got God created free will, and so then free will would have to have an equal hand in all good things and all bad things,
Right.
and that's fine, and I guess that would be a relatively deist
Yeah.
stance. Or God is a micromanager,
Right.
and clearly he's micromanaging good things and bad things. Now, interestingly enough, even if you say, okay, the bad things are just kind of happening on their own and he's not actually causing those, then you have that omission versus commission bias thing,
Yeah.
where clearly he would have the power to stop them,
Right.
right? And so therefore the fact that he doesn't is just as bad as if he were doing it
he's
himself.
condoning them. Yeah.
Right, so that's a very common decision-making bias, is that
Sure.
we, even though omitting something might have the same result as committing an act, that people think commission is worse, but it's not. They're actually equal.
Sure.
But at any rate, so this got me to thinking about this privatization versus socialization. So I said, interestingly enough, poker players do the exact same thing as Kathy Ireland.
Right.
Right? So Kathy Ireland has it set up in her head that if it's good, it's God. If it's bad, it's man. Which is that she privatizes the good results to God. She socializes the bad results to
Right.
man, and she ignores the other two cells in the puzzle. And I said, poker players are just like Kathy Ireland. So bringing it full circle to a Sports Illustrated supermodel.
Absolutely. And this means that you don't improve your game, and there's more
Right.
dead money at the table for us.
That's
Basically.
right.
So let's not.
Somehow, thanks to Kathy Ireland, that's
Yeah,
true.
exactly.
Yes.
The two best parts of the course for me were one, when you did the clinics. This was a great.
Yes, that was fun.
I wish that was. You should do just that for a day. Just charge people to sit at a table with you and watch you berate people's horrible play. Was one of the greatest joys of my life. Like watching you rip into my friends for their terrible donkey play was just awesome.
Can I tell you something really funny about that too? So, a few years ago, I was doing a ladies-only camp. Now, here's the interesting thing. I have a very strong stance against ladies poker events. Now, so some people think that it's in some way inconsistent that I teach ladies-only camps, but it's actually not, because there's a difference between a learning environment being better. We know
Sure.
that there's a lot of evidence that shows that women learn better.
Boys' school versus women's
Exactly.
school. Yeah.
At any rate, so I figure if I'm going to tell people they shouldn't play in ladies' events, I should give these women the tools so that they can play
Yeah.
in any event. So anyway, there was one woman there who was really, she really wanted to be an instructor at the camp. And so after the camp was done, she had a little letter writing campaign to the World Series talking about how I was so mean at the tables that I made people cry. So at the time, I didn't really understand where these letters were coming from. And I sort of took it at face value. And I called up the people at the camp, and I was like, I think maybe I shouldn't do those hand labs if people are going to cry when I talk to them.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we really still want you to do them. So the next camp I came in, and I was very nice. Like, I was purposely really nice to everybody at the table.
Right.
And they got a barrage of complaints.
Yeah.
It was so funny because...
Well, I mean, you're not there to make friends. You're there to improve
Right.
your game, and it's so memorable when somebody plays, ace-7. I remember the hand very specifically because it was one of my friends was doing it.
Yeah.
He's in midfield playing ace-7, and you turn over the cards, and you're like, why are you playing ace-7?
Right.
Midfield? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, and you raised? Oh,
Right.
and then I'm going to be on the button with ace-10, ace-jack,
Right.
and I'm going to re-raise you. You're going to call like the donkey you are, and then we're going to come, and an ace is going to come out, and what are you going to do now out of position?
Right, exactly.
Now you're going to bet? Oh, great, because I'm going to push, and you're going to lose more money.
Right.
You know, it's like this great...
I love that. That's a really good repeat.
That was basically what you did. I mean, there was a couple of other beeps in there.
Yeah.
I think you called the person a retard about 7 times, but something. It was awesome.
But yeah, so when the time that I came in, the time that I came in and I was really nice to everybody, they got all these complaints. They were like, we're paying to have her yell at us.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be an asshole. So now I'll sometimes sit down at the tables and I'll start, before I ever start, I'll say, any comments I make are not about you as individuals.
Right.
I'm not commenting about you as people. I validate you all as human beings to start.
Big disclaimer.
Right. But I'm going to comment on your poker play, and I'm not going to do it in a nice way, because I would rather, when you're at a table and the situation comes up again, you feeling that shudder down your spine, kind of like, you know, the chicken pox virus still staying there and waiting to come out. You know, but and people really actually react to that well. And when I see students afterwards, they come up and they're like, those were great, and I really remember these hands.
The one thing I took away from it that improved my game most was just overplaying hands that I shouldn't have been in midfield, which for people who don't know is, you know, somewhere between being totally out of position and totally in position.
Right, exactly.
And I took that out of my game. Like, just, I'm not going to play anything marginal there. And my game became so much better. People noticed it and said to me over and over again, wow, you're such a better player these days. And I realized you don't have to win every hand.
No.
This seems to be the problem with the bad players. They feel like every hand is the last hand they're ever going to play in their life. I mean, do you find that a lot?
I actually just came from a poker lesson this morning. I was giving somebody a private lesson. And what I said to them is, you have to realize that it's not the last poker game you're ever going to play.
Yeah.
That poker is a continuing, you know, this is going to be over your lifetime. And one thing that's interesting about that is that when I think you start really understanding poker as sort of a continuing, over your lifetime sort of endeavor, it helps you with a very specific problem that people have, which is that when they're losing, they don't ever want to quit. Because they feel like they have to get their money back.
Right.
And that's really interesting. And there's no reason for that, because there'll be poker tomorrow, and there'll be poker the next day.
This whole thing of catching up, I got to get back.
Well, and what I say to people all the time is this, that, okay, so you obviously heard this at the camp. When you're winning, you're usually playing your best, and you have a great table image.
Sure.
Right?
This guy's unstoppable, she's unstoppable.
When you're losing, even if you're playing well and just getting unlucky, it doesn't matter. You have a terrible table image.
Yeah, people are going to
They're going to be coming after you. And anytime they're attacking you, it means you have to make more decisions. And the more decisions you have to make, the more opportunities there are for mistakes. So it's actually a bad time to be playing when you're losing.
Get up.
But if somebody's winning and their wife were to walk up to them and say, hey, we're supposed to go to dinner, they'd be like, I'm racking up now.
Yeah, I'm out.
Right? Let me go. Let's go. Yes,
Right.
Dinner. Yay. When they're losing, it's, I'm stuck, the game's great, we'll have to postpone, all this stuff, and they'll come up with any excuse, they'll cancel dates, they'll do whatever they can, because they're like, the game's great, but I got to get it back. And it's just the opposite. When you're winning, you should be saying to your wife, can we do it another time, because I'm playing in a very optimal situation at the moment. And when you're losing, you should be like, yes, let's go, let me get away from this table, because nothing good's happening to me right here. And then you can leave. And people behave exactly the opposite. I think because they have a sense that there's some sort of finiteness to the end of that, but there's not. The poker game's only defined by however finite your life is.
Right.
So you might as well just come back the next day and try again.
Cool off.
Yeah,
Analyze the situation. Why did you donkey off all that money?
That's right. So, and a lot of what can happen, you know, with the midfield stuff, the adjustment that's being made there is really just, and this was obviously something I talked about, that it doesn't make any sense to ever knowingly get yourself in a situation which is likely to result in extremely marginal decisions. You know?
So you don't want to get yourself into a position where your decisions, you're not going to be able to make a really good, clear decision.
You can't make a clear decision. So if you take the A7 example that you gave, when you raise and you have anybody giving you some resistance through a call or whatever it might be, it's very likely that they've got an ace along with you, because people play aces in this game. And even if they don't, you don't know. So it's certainly within the realm of possibility. So what happens is that when we think about how do you hit that hand well, in poker, if you improve at all, which is the minority of the time, but if you do improve, you're likely improved once. So in the case of A7, it means you're going to make a 7 or an ace. Well, if you make a 7, you're almost definitely not going to have top pair, and that always creates issues. So those are going to be very difficult decisions. And here's the problem: if you hit an ace, there's no clarity to the hand. It's not like you have ace king.
No.
Ace 8, Ace 9, Ace 10, Ace Jack,
got ace
Ace
garbage.
Queen, Ace King, all of those hands
Ace
beat you.
nothing you have,
So
yeah.
now what happens is that essentially when you bet, you're rooting for your opponent to fold. So that hand has now become a bluff.
Right.
So anytime you bet and you're rooting for a fold, it has to by
interesting.
definition be a bluff,
Yeah.
even though you might not be thinking that because you're like, I have a pair. But
Right.
you need to think about the hand the right way. So bluffs are always difficult.
Right.
So now when you get called, you have no idea what to do. And the fact is that you set yourself up for that problem in the first place.
Right. So why would you put yourself in that situation? Put yourself in a situation where you can win.
Right. So, I mean, if you compare that to Ace King, when you flop an ace there, you have a lot of clarity to your hand.
Yeah. Top pair, top kicker.
Right. If I'm unlucky enough to be against a set, whatever.
Yeah, I'll deal with it.
I'll deal with it.
Other great part of the class, the chips are people communicating.
Yes.
Use your chips to communicate. That's stuck with me.
Oh,
And
good.
very deeply, because when I would look at people betting, I would say, I didn't think every time, what exactly are they trying to say with that amount of money, with those
Right.
chips? They chose that number, they chose to raise or re-raise or whatever it is to call, and it really profound sort of statement, perhaps obvious, but really consider that when people are raising now.
And I think that, what's interesting, and I wonder, I always wonder with the way that I think about that, if that comes from the fact that I was actually getting a PhD in linguistics, that I think about languages and I think about the way that people communicate, because it's not something that I hear anybody ever say.
Right.
That everything that you do has some sort of language, and at the poker table, the language, the words are the chips, that this
Right.
is the way that we're communicating with each other, and whenever chips are going into a pot, you're using them either to ask a question or to make a statement.
Right.
And you need to understand, is the person querying you? What are they saying with their chips? What does that mean? And then you're saying something back with your chips.
Right.
And once you understand that you're kind of having a conversation, and you think about that as a conversation, I think that your game really improves. So, I think that you may have said, I can't remember, but I remember at that camp, I actually translated a conversation at one of
Sure.
the tables. I don't know if you were at the table for that, where literally I go like this. Okay, he opened in first position, so what was he saying with his chips? And the answer in first position is generally, I have a very strong hand, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well now he re-raised you. What was he saying? Well, I know that you have a strong hand because you raised in first
I have
position,
something
but I
better.
obviously have something better because I'm willing to re-raise you even though you came out of the one hole. Now, he called. What's he saying? I know that you know that, but now I'm
I
telling
have
you
nuts.
I have, right. And then we went on and we went, onto the flop and so on and so forth. And the response that I was having there is, how did you ever continue in this hand? Did you not hear the conversation? So once this flop hit and you were still getting resistance and they were saying, I know what the situation is. You called before the flop. I know that you have a very strong hand and you're
Yeah.
still willing to give me this resistance. Why weren't you listening to them?
And that's the thing I took away from was, if I have not looked at it this way, there's other people who are not looking at it this way, let me try to identify those people.
Right.
And I found 2 or 3 people in the games I play in. I won't say their names because they're probably going to listen to this.
That would be
Jake. And I had to take one of my friends aside and I said, what did you think I was saying when I raised every time out of position?
Right.
I was trying to tell you, you're my friend, lay it down.
Right.
I'm raising out of position. I have the nuts.
Right.
And you were like this, la 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 la.
La, la,
I'm
la,
not
la,
gonna
I'm
listen.
not listening.
I want to give my money away with jacks or
Yep.
ace jack or something like. There's
Yep.
so many ways for you to lose. How many times did I have to bet and raise you to
And that's
get
the
you
thing.
off the hand?
And that was the conversation that I had with these people at the table. How were you not listening to him?
Yeah.
Were you not hearing what he was saying?
Yeah.
And I think that when people realize that they're, poker is a very silent game normally, obviously, unless I guess like Daniel Negreanu or Mike Matusow is involved.
Yeah.
But other than that, it tends to be a very silent game. And I think that people think that means there's silence at the table, which is not true.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it just means that you're not talking with your mouth, but you're communicating in every other way possible. I mean, here's an interesting thing. We can talk about, I'll talk about a hand that happened at the main event, and we can talk about the misread in somebody who wasn't listening.
Yeah.
Antoine Saout raised on the button. No, he raised in cutoff. Okay, so what he's saying there is, I could have anything.
Right.
Okay, so we're starting off with that, not very much there. Now, Darvin
Or I could be
Moon-
taking the blinds.
Yeah, I'm saying
Any
I could
numbers.
have anything. I could have
yeah.
a really good hand. I could have 7-deuce offsuit. I could have anything here. Now, Darvin Moon calls in the small blind. What is he saying there? I don't have the very best hands because surely I would re-raise you out of position, and we
Right.
know that he was aggressive enough to do that, but I'm flat calling, so I've got a hand that I don't like that much, but I think is good enough to call. Okay, so great. So we know that because he's flat called. So, and particularly in that case against the late position raise, we can assume he doesn't even have anything as good as, say, ace-jack. Okay, so now the board comes down Jack, what was it? Jack, deuce, what was the other card? It was like Jack X deuce. I think it was Jack 6 deuce. Jack 6 deuce. Okay, so now Darvin Moon leads out for the whole pot. Now what was interesting there was I was actually commentating and I said, wow, I guess maybe he has some sort of jack. That's what I decided. Oh, I remember what it was. It was King Jack deuce.
King Jack.
Okay, the board came King Jack deuce. And I said, I don't think that he can have a king because I don't understand the lead out there. That's very weird. So I said, he's got to have some sort of jack. I don't think he has ace jack because I feel like he would have raised before the flop. So I'm thinking Jack 10-ish, right? My commentator's like, I don't know. If I were Saud, I'd fold King Queen. I was like, what?
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll see who was right in the end. Anyway, but I said what his lead out for the whole pot seems to do is scream, go away, go away.
Yeah.
I kind of like my hand, but I don't know.
I got a piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not a really good piece because I'd be going for a check raise.
Let me take a stab at it.
And particularly that he bet the whole pot is particularly like, I'm not trying to suck you in. Like if he bet less, I would have been like, well, maybe he's doing something
got
tricky.
Got 2 pair or something.
But he actually bet the full pot. It was 2.3 million. Okay.
Right.
Now Saud, who only has a little over 11 million, now makes it 6.7. Now here's the interesting part of the conversation that Moon didn't hear. Okay, so Saud is saying, you just bet out, and I'm going to put in 6.7 million, and I've only got 4 million behind. So clearly, I've put in all my chips.
Right, I'm committed.
Right. It's not just that he's committed; he's literally at that point put in all his chips. I mean, it's such a small amount because sometimes. Interestingly enough, there's an interesting thing you can do in poker where you're not actually committed, but you appear to be extremely committed to your opponent. And it's a way, when you have marginal hands, to sometimes save yourself in the tournament. Instead of betting your whole stack, you can bet an amount that looks committed to your opponent where they know if they move in on you, that they feel like you can't fold. And therefore you can fold your marginal holding. This was not that case because he only left himself with 4 million.
Right.
So at this point, there's 2.3 plus 2.3 is 4.6 plus his 4.7, right? So there's well over 9. If he moves in, Darvin moves in, that's another 8 in the pot, right? So now there's going to be 17 in the pot to call 4. This is a situation where he has put all his chips in the pot. Okay, so he's now said, by the way, I'm willing to put all my chips in the pot.
Right.
And now Moon moves in as if that's and now Saud obviously calls, and Moon just had ace high. So
ouch.
Right. So he didn't even have a jack, but I had him in the right range, something where he was like, please fold, please fold, please fold, which is what I felt like. I didn't think he was bad as ace 4, but now what was interesting was had he heard what Saud said, that would not have happened to him, and he would have not managed to blow off an extra over 8 million by doing that. But he wasn't listening to the conversation that was being had over here, and that's something that people do all the time is they don't pay attention.
Right.
So like that was a very interesting hand where it's just like, wow, how did that happen? Obviously, Saud calls the 4 million, and he had 2 pair.
Yeah, that was a terrible play.
Because he didn't listen.
You got to listen.
You have to listen. At everything, whether it's poker or not, but you have to understand the language, the currency that's being used. I
want to talk to you about profiling players. This is basically my way of getting a free consultation with Andy Duke. Just for anybody who's listening, this is a way of me improve my game. But I have discovered there are these archetypes, which I'm sure you've had many discussions with people about. But here in Los Angeles, there's certain demographics, and there are certain time periods where certain type of play occurs at the Commerce, at the Bike.
Sure.
And this is a valid strategy for finding games, you think?
Absolutely.
Because I've been playing at 2 in the morning on Thursday and Fridays.
That's a smart time to play.
And Saturdays, because it seems like people like to go to the $500 table and drink with their friends and not pay attention. How does this exist? I mean,
there's a really, like, if you have the time and the sleep patterns to accommodate it, some of the best times to go into any card rooms are between 2 and 3 in the morning. And the reason why is that people who are winning will have left by then.
Yeah.
Because again, people who are winning are trying to get away from the game, and particularly when you're getting into that 3 in the morning range, like most people
chasing,
actually,
catching up.
They want to be asleep. So if they were winning, they would have found an excuse to leave by then. So the people who are left over at 3 in the morning, not only are generally losing, but they're often drunk, and we know they're tired.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not like they got there at 2:30 a.m. Right?
No, they got there at 6.
They got there at 6, and they're playing much too long a session. So when you can come in fresh on that, it's really good. Now, you don't want to show... Some people will sometimes show up at 6 a.m., because then they really get the people who've been up all night.
Right.
The problem is that there's other fresh people who come in the game at the same time then. So you really want to get that dead of night kind of graveyard thing. And it really makes a lot of sense. I mean, it really does. It's like drunk, tired losers.
Yeah.
Are sitting in the game, and you come in completely fresh. And it's one of the reasons why when I talk about bankroll management and how you manage your bankroll at the table, I tell people all the time that I don't care whether you're winning or losing at a live table. You should be done between 6 and 8 hours.
Yeah.
Shouldn't matter. It's just because nobody operates that well. And on the internet, unless you're playing, obviously this is unless you're playing a tournament.
Right.
In either cases, but in the internet it should actually be less time because the LED screen tires you out faster.
Interesting.
So you shouldn't be playing 8 hours.
So if you can
straight
find
on.
people who are playing that long,
Yeah.
this is a good thing.
That's a very good thing.
Yeah, that's what I've discovered. And I
Yeah.
discovered when I got this from Barry Greenstein's book, actually, where he was talking about how he would be fresh for a lot of these home games.
Yeah.
And he'd be playing against people who didn't care about money
Yeah.
and who were business guys who were tired and hated their lives.
I'll tell you a story about my brother starting out. So when my brother first started out, he had moved to New York when he was 18. He was supposed to go to Columbia, decided to defer for a year because he had aspirations to become a chess grandmaster. He's very, very good at chess. He got up to master. He didn't actually make it to grandmaster. So he went there to study chess, and obviously the games world in New York are very intertwined. And he started getting into backgammon and then into poker. And when he first started playing, so there was this place called the Bar Point, which was on 14th and 6th. And it was a backgammon club and a gin club, but in the back they ran an illegal poker game. And it was just like, it was like a $3, $6 game. It was dealer's choice. So they played all these weird like crisscross and Jacob's Ladder and like all of this
Seven
stuff.
deuce.
Right. So he started playing in this game, and what would happen, as with many games in New York, what would happen is that the game would usually start sometime on Friday, and it would be over on Monday morning, and everybody was still there. Like, they would be playing for over 72 hours. So my brother had a very small college fund of about $6,000, and as with many people who start off playing poker, he lost that. So he lost his college money playing. And he lost his college money sitting down in this game and playing for 72 hours with everybody.
Yeah.
So then the Bar Point was nice enough to allow him to kind of sleep in the back in exchange for, he would clean up after the game and he would do errands for people in the game. So people would like go get me some pizza or a sandwich or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So he would go and be a runner in the game, and what he got in exchange for it was free rent and tips. So what would happen is he'd build up the tips from going out and doing this, and then he could get into the game, right? So that went on for a long time, and then one day he figured out, all these people are playing for over 72 hours straight. What if I play for like 10 hours or 12 hours and then I go to sleep? And then I come back on Saturday, right, and I play again, and then I go to sleep, and I come back on Sunday and I play again and I go to sleep. So he figured out that he could actually get 3 sessions in with these people who were playing and like drinking and doing cocaine. It was in the early 80s, right? So they were all like coked out and drinking or whatever for these 3-day, 4-day marathons. And he could play 3 times with them, having slept in between. And he broke the game.
Awesome.
Yeah. So he obviously paid himself back more than the $6,000 that he paid for the education.
So why do people get so addicted to it? I mean, I played in a home game in New York for a couple of years, didn't take it seriously. Then I came out here to LA, and somebody invited me to a game, and wow, the level of play in LA compared to New York is just unbelievable. People take it incredibly seriously.
They do.
And I just became absolutely addicted to it. Why do you think so many business people get addicted to it? And there's sort of a big contingent of them in there.
Well,
entrepreneurs and stuff like that.
I think there's 2 reasons. I think that one just has to do with the challenge of the game. That at one extreme, sort of in games, you have tic-tac-toe. Yeah. Right. You solve it, you're done. And at the other extreme, you have a game like poker. So we can think about the continuum. So a game like checkers, for example, checkers has been solved.
Yep.
Chess is getting close. We just need the computing power to do it, but we know that we can solve it because you can see everything. So poker is a game that will never be solved because you have hidden information, and once you have hidden information, you can't mathematically solve the game.
Right.
For anybody, particularly people who are like entrepreneurial or business or that kind of thing, that presents a really interesting intellectual challenge. And I think that what gets people really going about the game and what gets people really passionate and their juices flowing about it is that you can never not learn at the game, number one. And number two, the better you get at it, the more fascinating the game becomes.
Yeah.
Because it's like, peeling back the proverbial onion, right? Is that you start off and you think, oh, okay, what do I have?
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait a minute, okay, well, what do I have in relation to what I think the other people have?
Right.
Now let me work on really good at figuring out what the other people have, and then, well, wait a minute, now I've got to worry about what do I have, what do I think the other people have, and now I've got to worry about what do I think they think I have. So that has to do with understanding that person as a player and having followed what they do. And then once I do that, now I have to figure out how are they going to react to all of this. So there's some people where I can say, well, I'm pretty sure they have King Jack and the board's like Jack 6 deuce, and against player A, if I move in, I'm pretty sure they're going to fold. And player B, well, once they have a pair, they're going to be there forever. And so I've got, so there's no reason to try to bluff them off that hand. And I've got to figure out which one you are.
Right.
And, you just keep going from there. And then there's several streets of decisions. So I think that it's so fascinating to somebody who has that kind of mindset.
Right. And you're doing that all day long in business.
Exactly.
Partial information, multiple players competing in the same space for the same prize.
Exactly.
And intimidation and strategy. I mean, it's so
right. So I think that that's like so fascinating. I think that also people who are entrepreneurial tend to be action junkies, because otherwise why would they have been into that situation in the first place? I mean, I've been involved now, I think, in 4 different startups, and it's fun, but it's dangerous and it's exciting.
Yeah.
And it's your own time and your own fault, and nobody to answer all of that. And I think that poker is very similar. I think that it's not surprising that I was attracted to poker in the first place, and then I started getting into startups and things like that, sort of out of poker, which is backwards to what a lot of people do, but they're so interrelated that it's not that surprising. And then there's this other thing, which is the fact that in the end, while poker is certainly a game of skill, there's also a system of rewards that go along with it, where you get rewarded for actions. And the fact is that those kind of, sort of Skinnerian
variable reinforcement.
Yeah, well, this one in particular is a variable ratio.
Yeah.
Schedule, and those are really, really, really tough to break. Like if somebody gets trained up on that, it's really hard. It's what slot machines do.
Yeah.
So just to give the quick thing, there's 4 cells. One side is fixed and one side is variable.
Yep.
So and then there's ratio and interval. So ratio is number, interval is time. So think about a rat pressing and lever. They get a pellet after every 5 presses. That would be fixed ratio. So it's a fixed number. Every 5 presses, they're going to get the pellet. And what you see in behavior from those rats is they press relatively steadily, relatively slow, because they know they're going to get it after they're 5. And when you stop giving the pellets, they break really easily. Like they get to 15 presses and they're like, the damn thing's broken, and they're pretty much done. So that's the easiest thing to get rid of. Then you have fixed interval. So that would be after every 5 minutes. The rat will get a pellet. So what you see from them is the rats are sitting there twiddling their thumbs and grooming, and as they get close to 5 minutes, you get very rapid pressing, because they want to make sure they press as soon close to 5 minutes as they can. So press. They get their pellet. They go back to grooming.
Yeah, take it easy for a
then
while.
So you get kind of this spike, like this spike, and then and now it goes. There's It's been 10 minutes and they stop. So again, the fixed ones are relatively easy to break. Then you have fixed interval, which is just by time, but I mean variable interval, but it's a ratio. It's
could be 2
an
minutes,
average.
Could be 5 minutes.
2, 5, 100, whatever. So what you'll see from rats, it looks actually very similar to fixed ratio. Is they kind of press like this, because they know that if they press it around the time that it's going to come, it's no big deal. So you get this very slow, very steady pressing from them, and that's harder to break, but not impossible. So the really bad one is a variable ratio.
Yeah.
On average, you get a pellet every 10 presses. So we can think about a slot machine this way, right? On average, you get it every 10 presses. What happens to rats then is that when you train them up on it, they're pressing super, super fast all the time, because they want to make sure that they're because it's by number, right? So it's no longer, I just have to hit it around a certain time. I've actually got to get a certain number in. They press very, 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 very fast. And what you see is that when you stop rewarding them, once you get trade on, so let's say that it's an average of 100 presses, but it could be 1,000, it could be 1.
Right.
You don't know.
They're going crazy.
Well, what happens is when you stop delivering them the food pellets, they die pressing the lever.
Right.
They literally don't stop.
Right.
They're dead.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the cell that's almost impossible to break somebody of, and it's the slot machine cell.
Yep.
And it's most gambling cells. So it's a crap cell, it's a baccarat cell. It's
Yeah.
all of these gambling games are,
Sure.
are variable ratio.
Yeah.
And so when somebody does have addictive tendencies, it's very hard to deal with. It's just really hard to get them off of it.
So, poker being legal in the United States online,
Sure.
do you think this is going to happen?
Well, okay.
I
so,
hear it's absolutely happening, and then I hear no way.
Okay, well, I actually know a little bit more than most people because I
Right.
actually lobby the issue.
Yeah.
So I got to testify in front of the House Judiciary Committee on it, actually, which was really, it was
Fascinating.
interesting. Well, I never thought that was on my list.
Right. You have that on your 100 list. on your
But
bucket
I
list.
didn't. But it wasn't something before I did it. It wasn't on my list. Like I
Right.
wasn't like, oh, I really want to be able to testify in front of Congress. And then when I did, I was like, A, that should have been on my list, and B,
Right.
that was like in my top 10.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Pretty
in my
intense.
top 10. That was pretty, like I have the 4 kids and like testifying in front of Congress. It was
Wow.
pretty awesome. So anyway, basically, you know, the Treasury was due to publish the regulations for UIGEA on December 1st, and they just delayed them. And it was through bipartisan support, a lot of petitioning. The Harry Reid
Yep.
petitioned. We had the Senate Minority Whip, obviously Barney Frank. So, but anyway, it was bipartisan support. A lot of people were sending in, and Geithner was on board, and then they got the Fed involved and got a delay to the regs. And what that means, it's actually very good, because what it means is that they're admitting that there was a problem with the way that the regs were
Written.
So here's the issue, that we have UIGEA, and it's one of the worst pieces of policy that's ever been written in the history of lawmaking. Because what it says is banks aren't allowed to process transactions for illegal activities, but don't ask us what that is.
Right.
I mean, literally, that's about what it says. So when you looked at the way that the regs were written by the Treasury, it literally said that. It said, you can't, this was to the banks, because these are regulations for the banks, you can't process transactions for illegal gaming sites, but it's up to you guys
to determine
what's illegal.
is.
Now, the problem with that is that, so this is a little detail, but there's something called a minor rule and a major rule, and when we're talking about regs,
Yeah.
we need to really worry about that. A minor rule is essentially something that's been determined to have very little impact on the businesses that it affects.
Right.
Okay, so then you can do that. You don't have to have hearings. It doesn't have to go through the courts. You know, none of that stuff has to happen. A major rule says there's going to be a very large impact on the industry that it impacts. Obviously, in this case, it's the banking industry, and we know that the studies are it's going to be in the hundreds of millions in terms of cost to the banking industry. So clearly, UIGEA is definitely a major rule. When the Bush administration put those regs, pushed them forward, just in time, by the way, because they just made the deadline, they treated it as a minor rule. So there weren't any of the normal hearings or any of that kind of stuff that would have had to go on if it were a major rule. And we can think about, for example, that there's this thing called the Paperwork Reduction Act that I know sounds very bureaucratic, but it's a very interesting act, which basically says that if something can be centralized, you must centralize it, okay? Because otherwise it will cause an undue burden on whatever industry. So if we think about UIGEA, what they're saying is you have 50 states, and then you have all these gaming activities, right? So we need to fill in the cells for each state, for each gaming activity, because gambling laws are in the purview of the states. That's a states' rights issue. Is this legal or is it not legal? So you have to fill out all of these cells. Hawaii and Utah are really easy. The answer is no for all of them.
Yeah.
Every other state's really difficult. You have to examine the statutes of all 48 states in which gambling is allowed and determine which activities are legal and aren't legal. Now, clearly, this is something that the federal government should be doing. Instead, what they said is, we're not going to do that for you. It's too hard, they said.
It's too hard.
We're going to make every single general counsel of every single bank in the country do that. So think about the duplication of work.
Yeah.
That's the
They've
paperwork.
each got to make this matrix and figure
Right.
out, get a legal opinion on each box.
On each box, which is tough.
Prohibitively expensive.
Prohibitively expensive, and thus the Paperwork Reduction Act. So
Yes.
we understand now what this is. So basically, when they delayed the regs, essentially what they said is we need to look at this because it looks like it was a major rule. It was treated as a minor rule. Now that's really good because it means that it's likely that that's going to continue to get delayed because they're going to have to go through process now that they said, yes, there was a problem with the way that these were going to be published in the first place. So that's good. So that what that does is essentially puts the industry in some kind of limbo, but it's a relatively good limbo because we know that poker playing itself is legal. There's nothing illegal about offering the service.
Correct.
It's in fact, if you're not allowed to offer the service, service, it would be a violation of the General Agreement on Trades and Services through the World Trade Organization. So we know that it has to be legal to offer. So that's why they came up with UIGA, to get around the fact that this is a legal activity. They were just talking about a financial institution issue.
And there's millions of people playing currently in America. And what are we going to do? Put all these people in jail?
Well, this is the thing, exactly.
I mean, it's sort of a little unrealistic. And all of the great internet companies in the world are based in the United States, except for all of these great internet poker sites.
So
and
what
we're
the
basically
really
enabling
wants,
other countries to have these industries.
Right, and what the industry really wants is to be licensed and regulated in the U.S. We're talking about tax revenue that the U.S. is missing out on of somewhere likely to be around $10 billion.
Right.
God knows we have pay-fors right now.
Yeah.
Might be helpful for those.
Yeah, we might need $10 billion.
We might need $10 billion.
Year after year.
So, the goal would be to do something similar to, for example, what the UK does and have full license and regulation. Right now, the industry's in limbo. There's nothing illegal going on. The regs are delayed, so you can still get money on the sites and whatnot. But in the end, the sites would just like to, hey, we'll pay you to let us be on American soil and advertise .com.
Right.
In America. And think about also just in terms of the revenue that's being missed out, just in terms of sponsorships and advertising and things like that, in terms of
tons of jobs,
how much they would pay to be able to advertise .com instead of .net, how valuable those properties would be.
There would be 10 times more poker on television. Right?
Yes, that's absolutely true.
You would move all these different companies from Costa Rica and Ireland into the United States. You'd have tons of more jobs here. They pay their taxes.
Got a lot
properly.
of Isle of Man, Costa Rica, Ireland, India, and I think it's a crazy stance. When I was debating Goodlatte when I was testifying in front of the Judiciary Committee, it was one of the greatest things where he was like, well, we have a moral objection to this. And I was like, a moral objection? We offer gambling in 48 of our 50 states. Yeah. And he said to me, interestingly enough, he said, well, but that's land-based. And I said, well, I don't understand what the moral difference is between placing a bet at the Bellagio and placing a bet online.
Yeah.
So then he said, well, yeah, but that's intrastate. And I said, no, because we have legal horse racing and fantasy sports betting.
Sure.
Which is all interstate. Like we don't
OTB,
have any.
You can bet
yeah,
on
we
the
have
web.
no objection to interstate gambling.
Yeah.
Even online or land-based.
You can bet horses online, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And and he just sort of humphed at me after that. But it was interesting because they try to put it forward
How dare you
as
put
some
the
kind
facts
of,
out there?
I know, it's so horrible. he first tried to put it out as a moral issue, and then he said something, this was pretty cockamamie. He said, well, aren't you putting an undue burden on the states, asking them to enforce these, you have to be 21 to gamble? And I said, well, you're not putting an undue burden on any states because it's just like the drinking age. The businesses are required to enforce an ID. So I don't understand what you're saying. The businesses have to enforce the 21, and if they are in violation and not using best efforts, then they would get fined by the federal government. How is that putting a burden on the states? And then he humped
The states
again.
get to collect tons of tax revenue, I guess,
right.
and that's a big burden.
And
checks.
when we're trying somehow, when this country decides that after paying, what was a $9 billion stimulus package or whatever the hell it was, that it's a good time right now to spend some more money on health care, that $10 billion could come in handy, I think.
Yeah, and fighting wars that we can't possibly win, and
all of that.
Going off on
we're spending so much ridiculous money. I keep saying, look, I'm not against universal health care, but how about at the end of the Clinton administration when we were in surplus and we had the money to pay for it? I hardly think that at this moment in time is a good time for that.
Good time, right? We're sending 30,000 more kids.
Aren't we supposed to be responsible? I have to be responsible with my money. I'm not allowed to spend money I don't have.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Now you're sponsored by Ultimate Bet.
Yep.
And so is now Joe Seebach.
Yes, he is. Very excited about
Congratulations on that.
Thank
we
you.
like him, big Twitter guy. But there were some...
Yeah, but he cheated to get all those followers,
Well, he was on the automatic follower
He got on that list, man.
He got on the suggested user list. He did not earn all of them. But
I want that suggested user. They're getting rid of it.
They're getting rid of it.
I'm so happy.
I was the number 2 user for a while.
Ted Chris said while he's benefited from it, he agrees that you should have to earn your followers.
I agree.
I thought that was very nice.
I was the number
tweet
2
that.
user in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
75,000. And then the suggested follower list, and people get millions.
Yeah, I know. And you should have
not
to earn
us.
them. I know. I feel like you should have to earn your followers.
Right. Or we should be on the list. One or the other.
One or the other. Let me cheat along with everybody else, or everybody should have to earn.
But that site went through some cheating scandal,
yes,
correct?
it did. A very big one.
And what was the outcome of all that? Because it turned out it was a guy who was a poker professional or something.
Yeah, so there was this guy, Russ Hamilton,
Right.
1994 world champion.
Crazy.
I know. So, essentially what happened with the site is that there was a breach in the software where there was a program that could be run in parallel to the site that he had that would allow you to see people's hole cards while you were playing. So this was a pretty big breach. Not the first breach of its kind. It had happened before, not on Ultimate Bet, but on other sites. And there's been some other issues like Full Tilt had a big bot problem, and then there's been some things that happened on PokerStars. So these things do happen.
And they happen in real life card games as well.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So, but this was really interesting because he had been one of the original investors in the site, so had access to, I guess, the software developers or whatever. And so anyway, he had this program, and really, so here's where Ultimate Bet fell down. I think that anybody who's involved in startups understands the term friend of the project.
Right.
Right. So we all understand friend of the project, and what happens with friends of the project is they tend to get sort of special attention.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, the fact that he was a friend of the project allowed him to create a massive number of accounts without question, which is ridiculous, by the way.
Absurd.
I have one account.
Yeah.
I'm one, and I'm very proud of the fact that I have one account. Now, back in the day, I used to have an account that I played under so nobody knew who I was, but then at some point along the way, I was like, that's really bad for me to have a secret account, and I got rid of it, but, as I was thinking through the ethical issues, but I've certainly never had more than 2 at a time.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he had 88. And was allowed to create 88 accounts, apparently, without any question. Not only that, but a tremendous number of transfers, between accounts and so on and so forth. So that was a big fall down on Ultimate Bet's part. Regardless of whether you're a friend of the project or not, there's a point at which it's absurdity.
Yeah.
So I understand them not necessarily having an issue in 2004 when I said, I'm always playing under Andy Duke and everybody's railing me. Can I have a second account where I can go and play in private? And them saying, okay, because at that time that wasn't against the rules of the site because they didn't have a posted rule that you only could have one account at the time.
Right.
And I get that. I get them making an exception for me maybe to be able to have a second account. As soon as it was against the rules, I voluntarily removed the account. But so I understand that. But there's reason and without reason, right? So then the second thing that happened was that they didn't have the appropriate just sort of security flags that would allow you to see an account that was winning really very far out of the range of what was normal. And so you had this one account in particular, Neo, and really all 88 accounts that he had that were winning out of the range of really what you would expect, several standard deviations away from the mean.
And the users who record hands and winnings and stuff like that just absolutely busted him immediately.
Well, it was over some time. So what happened was that the community figured out that this issue was going. So that's the fall down on Ultimate Bet's part is they didn't have the proper software running in the background that was essentially scraping the site for these kinds of results. And they also allowed this friend of the project thing to be completely ridiculous. I mean, it was ridiculous that they weren't looking at those withdrawals and those transfers and the number of accounts that he was creating and all of those things. Now, that's the end of the story for the problems for Ultimate Bet, because what Ultimate Bet did after that was exactly what you should do. And it's the reason why I was willing to stay with the site and willing to support them, because what had happened was that the breach of the software occurred under a regime from 2005. Now, in 2005, 2006, this is when UIGA hit, and now the site transfers ownership. So this issue that had been happening is now transferred and obviously not disclosed to this new ownership group. Okay, so this new ownership group got saddled with a problem that was the old ownership's fault. Now, with the old ownership, I actually have a lot of bitterness toward them because I kept asking over and over again, because it's something that I was concerned about. There's no software or anything that could, that's a God mode, because there's no reason for it, because there's nothing that you can learn in production that you can't learn after something's thrown over the data wall, right?
Yeah.
And so I would ask that about every 4 or 5 months, and my answer was always no, nothing like that has ever existed, don't worry about it, so on and so forth. So I feel like I was kind of lied to about that, but okay, so we can set that aside. We now move forward. It's this new management group. The new management group now has inherited this problem, okay? So now the community discovers it, and the new management group said, let us take a moment to investigate it. The community was like, screaming about that, and I was like, that's crazy. Like, they're saying they want to take time. Within about 3 months, they announced, yes, there actually is a problem. And now they said, let us take the time to make sure that everything is made right. Again, the community was screaming, why isn't this happening faster?
Yeah.
And it's like, look, do you want to have your cake and eat it too? Like, you need to understand that if you want this done right, they've got to look at, literally, it was something like 2 or 3 years worth of data where they had to look at every transaction that occurred between all of these 88 accounts and the users in order to now come up with a formula that allowed the proper refunds to occur. So that took a while. The first round of refunds was done about 3 months after the problem was discovered, and then the last round of refunds was done about 6 months later. The total amount that the company refunded, and again, remember, this was not this ownership's fault.
Right.
But this ownership refunded $22 million.
Wow.
Now, obviously, they could have said, screw you.
Right.
At which point I would have walked away. But
Sure.
They could have said, screw you, this is this group's problem, why don't you guys all go sue these people?
Yeah.
And they said, no, you know what, we inherited the brand and we bought the brand and we have to make it right by the users. And they refunded the $22 million. It's on a completely new software platform now, so there's the software is secure. They invite people to go look at it. They don't care if you do. They have a whole security system that's very state-of-the-art that's now doing all that scraping that should have happened in the first place. So now people can't do that. So there's a flagging system. It's like yellow flag, red flag. Red flags get shut down immediately. Yellow flags get put into investigation in terms of results. So you
feel good about it. You feel like it's
I'm
really
very
secured
comfortable,
out.
and the way that these people handled it was really amazing and very different than the way that the old management wanted to handle it.
What happened to the guy who did all this stuff? Is he going to be
He's just like
prosecuted,
living in Las Vegas. I mean, one of the problems with the UIGEA is that the DOJ stance is that this isn't legal, and so what are you going to do? It's like saying that guy sold me some bad cocaine. Like, okay,
right?
And I'm going to arrest you now for buying cocaine.
Yeah, it wasn't
like what's going to happen there. So it's not like our government is going to now arrest him for fraud and punish him. It can't happen. So the only way that he can get punished is through civil suits. So all I can do is cross my fingers that somebody who got cheated out of money from him is actually going to sue him, and I have my big fingers crossed for that. But I think that one thing that was very telling was that I feel like some of the people in the old management, their initial reaction was, how do we make this go away? Which is kind of telling. And this new management, at every single point,
how do I make it right?
How do I make it right?
Yeah.
And that's why I feel so comfortable with the new management.
Right. And it was I saw Joe took the time to talk about all these issues, et cetera.
Exactly. And really, I mean, I think obviously feels the same way as I do. I don't think that he would be endorsing a site that he wasn't 100% comfortable with. And then people got upset, like, well, how come it took so long for the account names to be released? Well, because Kanahaki had to do their business, and they needed to take the time to do a proper investigation before they released Russ Hamilton's name, before they released these
they have
names.
liability and that they could incur.
Right, exactly. And then now there's an interesting thing where I think that some people feel like, why aren't they releasing? I think there's about 41 names of people that were really associated with him in terms of transfers and whatnot, and they're like, well, why haven't they released those names? And my response to that is that people really need to kind of understand how that happened there. So what would happen is that he would you would come up to him and say, hey, I want some money on Ultimate Bet, let me give you some cash, right? So you now give me like $20,000, and then he would then transfer the $20,000 to you. So now there's this history of transfers between him and this other account. He would then go cheat you out of the money. You would then go give him more money. This is very dastardly. Wow. Right, okay. So a vast majority of those names are people who are really who are actually victims of this scandal. They were people who are, as far as we can tell, completely honest, who are actually being cheated, and their association in terms of a lot of transferring between those accounts happens is really because they were giving him money and then being cheated out of the money. So here's the issue. We know how people are, right? If you publish names that are associated with Russ, everybody's going to be like, aha, cheating ring, these people were obviously cheaters. And how do you take someone who was actually a victim, publish their name,
throw them under the bus,
and now everybody perceives them as cheaters? And then the answer is, well, in the end, don't you think people will investigate it and find out that they're not cheaters? I'm like, yeah, retractions work really well. Yeah. So I think that it would just be really unfair. Sure. To to say, hey, we're just going to release these names, particularly in this case when there's no court process that can be happening that would actually put everybody through the right process. I think that if the federal government were able to prosecute, then you could do that, because
Right.
then everybody's going to be able to testify and say I was cheated by him or
Yeah.
whatever it is. But it's not the case. So I don't
So
think
is
that
he
we want to have.
massively like persona non grata in the poker community now, or like?
Well, he's definitely persona non grata in the poker community.
Right. Like if he shows up to a table, people just get up and say, "I'm not playing with this guy."
Oh no, that would be gross, you know.
Yeah.
But he's still like living in his house and going around Las Vegas and playing golf, and
Wow.
And it makes me incredibly angry. I mean, for me, I feel like I had a year and a half of my life that was just, in a lot of ways, in some ways taken away from me. I mean, in some ways not, but in the sense that in a large sense, it was very consuming for me.
Sure.
I had to really examine, you know, where my loyalties were supposed to be lying, in terms of was I supposed to stay loyal to this new management? Was I supposed to walk off, understanding what the consequences of me casting that finger at them would be?
Sure.
And really deciding that whether they were worth my standing up for them or not. And in the end, you know, I had a really long conversation with my brother about it, because I think he was very concerned about really what I was doing in terms of putting my reputation out there
Sure.
in supporting this new management in this. And what I said to him was that when I testified in front of the House Judiciary Committee, what I said to them was, there's no way for us to stop cheating online, because it's too big a market. It's like
Sure.
saying nobody's ever going to cheat the stock market. Whenever
Right.
you have such a large, you know, market, people are going to try to breach it. And there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is say there are companies that will behave properly, and there are companies that won't.
Yeah.
And the advantage of online poker versus, for example, the stock market,
Sure.
is that every single transaction is recorded, and we have the data, and it's all stored data. So unlike when somebody, you know, when Boski comes along and insider trades, the people who are affected, the SEC leverages a fine.
Right.
But the people who are actually affected by that in a negative way never see a dime, because you can't scrape that data properly in order to know how to refund everybody.
Yeah.
That's not true on online poker. And so we have to believe that these sites will leverage the data in order
Yeah,
to
there's a
make
massive
it right.
audit trail, and people can record these outcomes as well. There's like third-party sites that record them.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of scrutiny and analysis on this data
Exactly.
already.
And so we should, you know, because everybody says, oh, cheating online. I'm like, you're so much safer playing online because of this,
Yeah, I
because
would
we
agree
can
with that.
refund. So
certainly compared to a home game or a card room. I played in card rooms in LA.
Exactly.
I have friends who've played in card rooms in LA, and seeing them drop $50 in a 5-10 game, you know, like sneaking the $25 chips into the rake, and
Exactly.
it's like, wow, what's going on here?
Exactly, it's called the snatch game.
Yeah.
So what I
Snatch
said
game,
was,
huh?
yeah, that's what it's called. So if I'm going to testify in front of Congress that the reason why we should trust this industry is because they're willing to leverage the data that they have in order to refund, which is so unique to this industry as opposed to almost every other financial market we have where you can't ever refund and make it right, then when I'm sitting here with a management that's actually doing what I said we should be supportive of,
Right.
and leveraging the data and scraping it and making sure that they get this money refunded to the tune of $22 million,
Right.
I would be the biggest, fattest hypocrite
Right, sure.
on the planet if I then walked away because I was worried about whatever collateral damage there might be to my reputation.
Right.
And in the end, I had to think about my own personal integrity in terms of what I had testified to and what I really believed in, and the way that
Yeah.
I believe in this industry and the way I believe in the
I
people
mean,
running it.
this is your living.
Right.
You're a brand in it.
Right, and that my personal integrity was more important than protecting my reputation.
Yeah.
And if people didn't understand that and they wanted to cast aspersions on my reputation, I suppose that was their business. And in the short run, I might have lost some business and I might have lost some revenue for it, but I would be willing to make that exchange to know that I felt like I had done the right thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, it still remains to be seen. I mean, I don't know if there was any long-term damage to my reputation by standing by the site, but I don't think there was.
No, it seems like to give $22 million in
Right.
refunds you didn't have to give.
Exactly.
It was a pretty stand-up thing. It's a big number.
It's a
and
huge
that means
number.
they're in it for the long term.
Exactly. And I just felt
They
like...
could just change the name of the site. I mean, they
could have,
could
right.
just close that company, start another one.
Exactly, they could have
There's
with
a
the same
million
software.
options,
So,
yeah.
so I felt like, you know, I was being consistent within what my own stance was about the industry and the reason why the government should be regulating the industry,
Yeah.
and that interestingly enough, this scandal was really a shining example, you know, I'm sure paradoxically for most people,
Right.
but a shining example of why the industry should be supported by our government because of the ability to refund in situations like this, and the way that this company had behaved
Yeah.
was exactly why we want regulation and why it would be a good thing, and how great examples of how companies are supposed to behave when these things happen.
If you regulate it, you get rid of cheating. You make sure people pay their
Well, you
taxes
don't get rid of
properly.
cheating.
Well, you get rid of, if there is
But
cheating,
you can force companies
you
to
can,
behave like Ultimate Bet did.
Yeah.
What you can now do is force
you
them.
can own the cheating.
Right, and
own
also you can fine. I mean,
Yeah.
Ultimate Bet did have to pay a fine to their regulatory body, which was the KGC. So there was an SEC type of fine that occurred.
Right.
But yes, you can't stop cheating, but you can certainly enforce best efforts. You can make sure that companies are using the kind of software that Ultimate Bet is using today.
Right.
But had there been governmental regulation when this was happening, Ultimate Bet would have been forced to use best efforts then, and then this
Yeah.
might not have happened.
There should be some sort of auditing committee for auditing the software. I mean, this
There
exists.
is
yeah.
actually. But again, those audit companies, there are some that are shadier than others, that are just taking payments for it, and the government doesn't have any say over that. So how is the consumer supposed to know? I mean, from a consumer protection standpoint, regulation is very important because the government will make sure that each company is using best efforts in terms of most up-to-date software, in terms of to deal with majority verification,
Yep.
to deal with auditing of the software, auditing the random number generators, making sure that security systems are in place, customer service, how the money is being held. So, for example, right now there's no regulation that says that you have to hold customer deposits in escrow plus X%, right? So there's nothing that forces the companies to do that. Now, the good companies do that. So they'll have, all the deposits plus 15% generally are held in escrow. But there's nothing forcing them to do that. So, you have UB and Tilt and Stars, they're all behaving as if they're regulated. But why not just make sure that
everybody complies.
Yeah, they're not free-rolling on you.
Crazy. So here's an ethical question. Somebody's at the table not protecting their hole card sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. And this is a question somebody asked me. Do you tell them, like, hey, donkey, protect your cards? Or if they're holding their cards up like this and showing it to, like, everybody around the table, is that their problem?
This is a personal choice.
Yeah.
Because this is a game where you're supposed to protect your hand.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the definite thing. If a dealer is dealing high,
but you say something. Yeah.
You have to say something because the dealer is now giving certain people at the table, because if obviously you can imagine if a dealer's right-handed,
Yep.
the right side of the table is going to be able to see that, the left side won't. So I feel like if you're on the right side of the table, you should always say something, because it's very unfair. So in the dealer case, I think it's completely black and white. In the case of a player sitting next to you, I think it really depends on what you can live with as a human being. So I can tell you how I handle it. I tell them, you're showing me your cards.
Right.
And then I don't speak about it again.
Yeah.
So I let them know that they're showing them high, and then if they continue to do that, then I use the information.
Right.
But if they, but I feel like I should say something once.
Yeah.
But the thing is that for me, it's like if somebody chooses to not say it, I don't in any way think that they're behaving unethically or that they're doing something bad, because in the end, you are supposed to protect your own hand.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange. Some people just don't even do that.
Yeah.
What are these people who throw their cards up when they fold to show everybody the thing? And what is up with that? It's like, I'm not no longer in the hand, therefore everybody has to suffer?
Yeah, I mean, when players fold their cards high, by the way, I always announce what I see.
Yeah,
Again,
of course,
for the same reason as,
I
as
saw
the
a
dealer.
jack, whatever, yeah.
The jack of spades is exposed.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. I think it's just not thinking about, like...
So many people behaving badly.
I know it.
Crumpling up cards and throwing them at the dealer, really?
Oh!
Really? The dealer has so much to do with your bad play?
By the way...
Or luck?
Yeah. If the dealer has that much control over what happens to you, you shouldn't be playing in that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be a really bad game to play in.
It's just insane.
I don't understand it. I truly don't understand it. And the thing is that what really amazes me is you'll be sitting in a game and a dealer will sit down in the box and someone will be like, this is my unlucky dealer. I'm like, you're keeping track of this?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
And do you not think that you might have some self-fulfilling prophecy going on here? Because clearly you're like completely on tilt before the first turn is
Not counting the Red
dealt
Bull
out.
and vodka, but keeping track of the dealers.
I know.
Yeah, great.
It's the craziest thing. Like, really? You're tracking whether you win or lose more than your fair share of hands when a particular dealer's in the box? Like, that's
and what's
insane.
up with the commerce or bike? This is something I don't understand. When people behave outrageously badly and throw cards at the dealer, and they give them a warning, like, there's 1,000 people at commerce every night. Like, wouldn't you throw them out for the night?
You know what?
They need that one person's money so much. It's 0.01% of what they're going to take that night, probably.
I wish, actually, that there were more enforcement and strict enforcement of rules like that. I mean, if you think about, what they've done in professional football in terms of, like, celebration rules.
Yeah.
And, certainly the etiquette surrounding golf.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things.
Taunting,
yeah, exactly. That in any sport, they have rules about these things. You know, you can't taunt, you can't, there's no excessive celebration, you know, all of these things. And it's very important that you have those behavior standards in here. And in poker, I feel like, and I blame this a lot actually on the television coverage.
Sure.
Is that there's so much reward for bad behavior
Phil
because
Hellmuth,
it's like, it,
yelling at people,
yeah,
rating people 2 years ago.
I guess it's the same reason why like
reality
the
television.
Kardashians are
Yeah, sure.
getting so many viewers, you know, where you're
Absolutely.
just like, really? And because there's just so much reinforcement for that kind of behavior on television. And, you know, my feeling is always like, when you win a hand, there's somebody on the losing end of that. And there's two problems with me for the celebration. Problem number one is, wow, that's really rude because someone lost the hand.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're just being a dick.
Yeah.
But number two that I think is really interesting, and this is from, if you did it from just a purely selfish standpoint, like you're not worrying about anybody else in the world. Like you're only worrying about yourself, which I assume must be the case for these people because otherwise they wouldn't do that. There's this other problem, which is that that's not the last hand you're going to play in the tournament.
Right.
So by running around and screaming and celebrating, you've just taken yourself completely out of the game.
Right.
And now you've got to come back and like reset, which is much harder to do than if you just sat there quietly, took your money, didn't allow your emotions to get going, your heart rate to get going, your respiration to
Why
go
draw
up.
attention to yourself? You won the pot. That's enough.
Exactly.
Collect your chips.
Like collect your chips.
Next
Shut
hand.
the hell up, man. I just
All right. So
drives me nuts.
Last couple of questions. Phil Hellmuth, great player, good player. What's his story? Is he is he outdated now? Like is his skill set?
He's
been left
definitely not
behind?
outdated.
Okay.
But you know, the thing about Phil is it's that thing of what do you really mean by a great player? Because you have to tell me what game. See, with him.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about no limit hold'em tournaments, particularly large field no limit hold'em tournaments, I don't think there's anybody better.
Really?
And I think a lot of his success in those tournaments comes from his ability to get people to be very emotionally wrapped up in him. And you know, you have these people who are really going to make some deep errors against him because he's Phil Hellmuth.
Right.
Right? If you stick him into another situation, he's no.
Right.
I mean, is the answer no? He won't say no, but the answer is no. So I don't know that there's ever been a better no limit hold'em tournament player than him.
Wow.
I really don't.
And
think
Phil
there has
Ivey is
been.
the best to ever play at this point?
I mean, you know, I think that when you look at all around, I mean, Chip Reese was so amazing, and so incredible. But I don't think that he had the no limit game that Ivy has. So I think that Ivy has really everything that Chip Reese had, but with the no limit thrown in. And that wasn't because Chip wasn't a great player and wasn't smart enough to be great at no limit. It was that when he was playing, there wasn't really a lot of no limit around. So, you know, we're in an age now because of TV where no limit is everywhere, and all of a sudden there's all these no limit cash games. And when I started playing, it was all limit poker. All of it was limit poker. So my wheelhouse is really limit, and that's where you see most of my victories are in limit poker. But Phil's like just a half generation after me.
Yeah.
And so he's a great no limit player as well. And so I don't think that there's any question about it. And it's just one of those situations where it's like people are like, there's Phil Ivey, and then let's argue.
Right.
Right? We can argue about number two, but we know who's number one.
Fascinating.
It's incredible to watch him. And the thing that I think people don't realize about Phil Ivey is that he's an incredibly hard worker. That he plays more hours than anybody that I can imagine. He thinks about the game. He talks about the game. He's always trying to improve his game. And interestingly enough, my brother tells this story as well. When you talk about privatization and socialization of results, and you see the difference between what most people do and Phil Ivey, you really understand why Phil Ivey has become such a great player. Back in the day, my sister was trying to become a poker player. So this was when it was still at the Mirage. So we must have been talking about like 2001. And she was playing like in a 3-6 game, and my brother was playing up in the big games. And they went to the buffet together with a friend of hers who was in the 3-6 game, and my brother had to listen through the whole dinner to this guy talking about how he had played the perfect session and he had never made a mistake and he was so great. Obviously he was winning. He was so great and he couldn't possibly play better. And my brother's answer at the time was, I don't think I've ever played a perfect hand of poker. Like outside of like, I did play a perfect hand once, I told my brother. I was in a tournament, and it was the very first hand of a tournament at the Four Queens, and I opened the pot for 150 and a guy moved in for 5,000 and I called with aces. and it was the only perfect tournament I ever played because I lost the hand, so I was out, and so I know that I played perfectly that tournament. So but that's it.
Right.
And other than that, he said, I don't think I've played a perfect 15 minutes, like a perfect hand, and he compares that with Phil Ivey won an Omaha bracelet a few years ago. And my brother happened to be hanging out with him like right afterwards. They went to dinner. And he had just won a World Series of poker bracelet. And the whole dinner, all he talked to Howard about was, I screwed up this hand, and I should have played this hand better, and man, I really messed this up, and da-da.
Right.
And so you can really see the contrast is here's this 3-6 player who I'm sure never went anywhere, who was talking about how perfect he was, and here's a guy who just won a world championship. And he's talking about the private aspect of the things that had gone wrong there.
Yeah.
And obviously that's really the secret there, is that he's willing to say, I suck, and I do these things wrong, and I need to improve, and I need to think about them. And he really, you know, it's not just pure talent. I mean, he's obviously very talented, but that guy is a worker.
Yeah, it's pretty clear.
Yes.
We've been talking for almost 2 hours.
Have we really?
Yeah, we could talk for about
Is everybody
8 hours.
really bored? Are
No.
they all saying like I'm bored?
No, they're
Do we
just-
still have? How many people do we have? Now?
371.
See, they all went away. They were all like, ugh.
No, I mean, people do have days. They have to go
Yes.
on and do some other things. I mean, it is in the middle of the work day.
That's true. That's
But
true.
wow, what an incredibly long and interesting conversation. I could do this for hours with you.
Cool. Sometime I'll have to come back and we'll have to actually talk about my startups.
Yeah. What is the startup? You're going to launch one next week now.
I'm gonna launch one. It's beta testing this weekend.
Okay.
So
What's the concept?
It's called mymixednuts.com.
My Mixed Nuts.
Yes. So you know how when you go and get mixed nuts.
Now
at
you're
trail
like a
mix?
super vegan, like totally healthy person. I see those
I'm
vegan
really healthy,
cupcake
but
recipes.
yeah. But to be fair, I do
Okay.
eat meat.
Okay.
But I don't eat any dairy or egg or anything like that. So
Okay.
that's how I come out to be vegan. So it's vegan with like chicken.
Okay.
So anyway, so whenever I get mixed nuts or I get trail mix, I spend an awful lot of time picking the crap out that I don't like
Yeah.
of it. Right. Okay. So this is a problem for everybody, right?
Of course.
So
They put the carob things in there. Who wants those?
or
They're
those
disgusting.
little date things.
Yeah, no. If I wanted dates, I have a whole date. I get dates as a separate thing.
It's like icky, right?
Yeah.
So here's what happened. So when I was on Celebrity Apprentice, one of the producers and I became very good friends. His name's Ryan Simpkins. And he was one of the producers that supervising producers followed our team around. So I spent a tremendous amount of time with him. We became very, very good friends. So we're doing some development together. We've developed some television properties and that kind of stuff together. But we were driving along to dinner one day, and he said, "You know what I did with my friends a couple years ago?" And I said, "What was that?" And he said, "Well, a few years ago, I launched this website, My Mixed Nuts." And we did custom nut mixes, so people could choose like raw or not, or make their own nut mixes. And then I went, "Oh my God, that's a great idea!"
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, well, what happened was we launched it, and in the first 2 weeks we got this huge corporate order, and we realized, oh my gosh, don't have time to do this. So we filled the corporate order, and we made our money back, and we shut the company down." This is one of course, the strangest stories that I've ever heard.
Yeah,
right? I'm
very
like,
weird.
wait, hold on a second.
It was so successful.
It
we
was
shut
so
it down.
successful, we shut it down within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh my God, that's such a good idea. We should do that again."
Right.
And he's like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll put up the money for it." And so so my boyfriend and I actually ended up putting up all the money for it. And we're beta testing this week. So beta testing should start on Friday. So people on Twitter, I'm going to be sending out a code for 15% off for your first mix.
Right.
Because we want people to obviously buy it. So they should be looking for that. And
So
then
Annie Duke's Mixed Nuts.
yeah, they can have Annie Duke's Mixed Nuts, right? So it's mymixednuts.com. And it's cool because we've got like you can get raw or organic.
Yeah, like some
or,
people don't want salt, some people do want salt.
right, or like
raw,
the
organic.
almonds, you can get raw, you can get like tamari roasted, you can get smoked, you can whatever.
Right.
And then we've got all the fruits. So my mix is raw cashews, dark chocolate chips, banana chips, and raisins.
Wow.
I know, yummy. So we have all the different fruits
You
that
need to put a
can have.
handful in your mouth. It's like a
Oh, we
Snickers
also have
bar.
like M&Ms and peanut
Yeah.
butter covered pretzels and chocolate covered pretzels and yogurt covered raisins and like all the goodies.
Is there going to be some factory where these things are fulfilled, or is it
We have
next door?
we have somebody who's running that
Cool.
stuff for us and doing the fulfillment.
Awesome.
So anyway, yeah. So you should beta testing this weekend. I'm going to be sending
But the
out
most important
codes.
thing is, after I put my nut mix in, I can say, make this a reoccurring order monthly, and you'll just send it every month.
That is true.
That's got to be the killer feature.
Of course.
Right,
Of course. Do you think we would? And you can choose how often you want it sent to you.
Yeah.
Weekly.
Every 2 weeks, every
Right.
3 weeks.
And then we also have a point system. So you get points for signing up for the newsletter, for referring a friend. You get a point
Affiliate,
for
very important.
Yep. You get points for every bag that you order. So then obviously you get a certain number of points. You can use it for free shipping. You can use it for free mixes. And then we also have a huge gifting section.
You have to do the Cafe Press thing where I can put my nut mix up there, and then you sell it for me. So
Yes, we
Jason's
should. Well,
mixed nuts.
we
and
have
then-
we actually have a whole social networking part of the site.
Yeah.
So we have forums where people can talk about their own mixes and create their own mixes.
This is insane.
We have a charity component too. So we have certain mixes where, like for my mix, when you buy my mix, $1 goes to Anti-Up for Africa.
Cool.
And then we've got another mix where $1 is going to an AIDS hospice. And
this year, Anti-Up for Africa, they donated the entire amount to charity at the World Series, right?
not quite, but close.
Almost.
We got 400,000. So this year we've raised about 1.2 million so far. I guess it's almost at the end of the year.
And you're
so
partners
that's right.
with
Don Cheadle.
Don Cheadle, the actor.
And Norman Epstein. So that was another startup of mine, by the way.
Right.
So we started that in 2006.
That's got to be the most successful charity tournament, right?
Yeah,
At this point.
we do pretty well, yeah. And so we've raised, I think we're over $4 million now since September of 2006.
Wow.
Yeah, that was really exciting. So there's a charity component to the mixed nuts as well, where some of the profits go to charity.
And that was televised this year, wasn't it? Anti-Up?
Yeah, it was televised by ESPN.
First day,
And
a lot of celebrities.
well, we get so many people come and support us. And Herschel Walker, my dear friend from The Celebrity Apprentice, he came and played, and you could watch him on TV, not really knowing what he was doing. He had just learned to play poker before he came and played. But Matt Damon and Ben Affleck come and support us every year. Cedric the Entertainer, Ray Romano's been there 2 of the years. Casey Affleck comes out. Jason Alexander, Adam Sandler.
He's addicted.
Yep. Kevin James has been there. Mekhi Phifer. Nelly played this year. Sarah Silverman.
I play with Mekhi Phifer.
Brad Garrett's been out every year to support us.
Amazing.
Oh, Charles Barkley has supported us every year. Kenny Johnson supported us every year. It's just like, it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous
So for
list.
Donald Trump.
George Lopez has been amazing.
Very nice.
Yeah, he's been amazing as well.
So the only question I have about The Apprentice is Donald Trump have a toupee or is that real hair?
That's his real hair.
It's really scary.
But he does something where
it goes
I think
to the back and then front?
Well, I think he teases it
Yeah.
and sprays it. So he teases it so he kind of gets some lift here.
yeah.
And then it kind of goes, it kind of goes like from here, like at an angle, kind of this way. Like it's
So it's like a half comb over, but a sort of puffed up or something?
but it's puffed up. It's like way puffed up. Like it's totally teased and sprayed, and it doesn't.
All that money and success, nobody can tell him it looks ridiculous.
Well, how do you judge money and success? By the number of bankruptcies? Like, what
I
are you
know, that's
judging
true
it by?
actually.
Like,
Yeah.
Really?
It does seem like a house of cards, right?
It feels like it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, a lot of the stuff that people see with his brand on it.
I know,
he
he's just
doesn't even
licensing the
own.
name for like some small amount of money.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he's had a lot of. I mean, he's bankrupt again. He's just.
I saw that in the Wall Street Journal today.
Yeah, this is like number 3, I think.
And the people who own the bonds are like, why do we need Trump's name? Like, it's better without it. Take his name off of it.
Yeah, I think that I remember when I lived in New York in the 80s that that was his first bankruptcy. I remember because he was building the real estate. And you remember under Mayor Koch.
Yep.
I remember there was a big real estate bust. That was the last bust before this one, and he was over leveraged and ended
You
up
grew up in
going
New York?
bankrupt. I didn't, but I went to Columbia, so
okay.
I went to Columbia.
Ford.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. See,
Yeah.
so you remember that
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 80s.
back then, the 80s.
Interesting time. The 80s were good to me.
The 80s were good to me too. I spent a lot of time cutting the shoulder pads out of things though in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, it's like everything. I was always with the scissors, and then I'd have sometimes I'd have little holes in my shoulders, but at
There
least
were a lot
that
of card rooms in the Mayflower Club.
Well, there was the Mayfair.
Mayfair,
There was the Bar Point. There was something called. It was in a place. It ended up becoming a nightclub called the China Club, but there was a card
China
club there.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was up on
Right.
Upper West Side.
Right, so originally that was a card room. And then there was a place called the Coterie. And at the Coterie, I don't know how much cards they played, but they played a lot of backgammon chouettes. And that's where like Jason Lester started and Eric Seidel started up there.
These
playing backgammon.
card rooms are just very dangerous. I think they get knocked off.
Yeah, they do. I think they get raided a lot.
There was somebody got shot a couple of years ago
In New York?
Yeah.
Oh, I know
Guys
that
came
happens
in-
in Texas a lot.
Guys came in. Well, I mean, think about it. If you need to rob someplace that's not going to report $50,000 or $100,000
Yeah, you might as well.
missing,
That's true.
where are you going to go? Drug
That's true.
dealer or a card game?
Yeah,
I'll
that's
take
true.
the card game.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think Howard's ever been involved in a heist though. He's gotten arrested though. He's had a gun to his head.
Really?
Well, when he lived in New York, So when he lived in New York, obviously he was learning to play poker and he became very good at poker, but he was also betting on sports. So he had a really great analyst for the NBA and for the NFL.
But when you start the story betting on sports, it usually doesn't end well.
Well, the thing is that betting is not illegal, as we know.
Right.
And so he had a very big sports betting business. And in the 90s, when Giuliani was in charge, Giuliani has always had a huge hard-on for gambling.
Oh, yeah.
And so what happened was that they went in and raided my brother's office because obviously he had calls into bookies in New York. I mean, he was placing his action somewhere, and the bookies had been arrested, so he was on the phone records. And they arrested him, and on Christmas Day, or the day before Christmas, they threw him in the Tombs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and the Tombs are, for people who know, it's like underneath Midtown, like underneath Times Square in New York, this huge cavernous thing where you're just thrown in with like pimps and drug dealers.
It's where they hold you before they take you to Rikers.
Right. So it's like this huge cavernous space, and it's literally like where they're like, everybody to the left side, and they hose the right side down.
Yeah.
Everybody to the right side, and they hose the left side down.
You don't want to, this is a place you don't want to be.
No. And so they were there for 2 days.
Oh, fun.
Because that's why they specifically did it over the holidays. They seized everything. This was under RICO, obviously, which is, I hope everybody realizes, is ridiculous law, particularly if you're libertarian leaning.
Yeah.
But so they seized all of the crap in there, and then they eventually, he went and he pled it down to a misdemeanor. So now he moves to Las Vegas because he says, I'm not going to stay in New York anymore. This is ridiculous. Giuliani has a big hard-on for us. So he moves to Las Vegas. He sets up his sports betting business there, at which point New York calls up Las Vegas and says, hey, why don't you raid them now, and we'll split all of the seizure with you, which you can do under RICO. So then they got raided by Las Vegas. My brother's assets all got frozen for over a year. It was a very tough time for him. Yeah. And basically what ended up happening was that his lawyer was very clear with him and said, you can win this case because you have done nothing wrong. You're a bettor. And when you look at the subpoena, basically the warrant says that we know that they're doing something illegal because nobody would bet $20,000 on a baseball game unless they were doing something wrong. But when you looked at their phone records, because they were claiming that my brother was making book, when you looked at their phone records, over 95% of the calls were outgoing. So obviously this isn't a book, because in a book,
95 10 dimes, 5 dimes on this.
Right,
that.
So 95% of the calls will be incoming.
Yeah.
But this was not the case with these phone records. So there was no question that there was no evidence to support the idea that they were making book. But the lawyer said, look, the fact is that they've got your money seized, and because it's under RICO, and people don't understand this with RICO, RICO is guilty until proven innocent, which I'm sure that people think, like, that's crazy, that couldn't happen in America, but it does. And it was started during the Reagan administration, because that was the Just Say No on Drugs time.
Yeah.
And so basically they developed RICO so that they could arrest drug lords and seize things like cars that were used for drugs and all of this stuff, right? So if you got caught, like, you know, buying crack, they would take your car. Right.
Yeah, take your mom's car.
Right, exactly. And the drug dealers and these people involved in this drug activity were guilty and had to prove themselves innocent. So that's what RICO was originally meant for. Of course, they expanded that because it didn't specifically say only if it's drug trafficking. And so anyway, so his lawyer said, look, you haven't done anything wrong, but the fact is that you're guilty until proven innocent. And so they have all your assets frozen. And they're offering you a deal. And the deal, while a lot, is going to be only about half as much as what it's going to cost you to go through the court system and prove that you're innocent, which you will do, and you will win that.
Right.
But I would suggest that you take the deal because it's just going to be cheaper.
Yeah.
And so he did. And, you know, I think that in retrospect, I wish that he hadn't.
Right.
But, I mean, at that point, all his money was frozen up, and, you know, so it made... Which is why the government has so much power. Because of the guilty until proven innocent, they hold your assets off. And then they say, well, we'll give you back half of your assets if you just plead.
Right.
And like, what can you do because you don't have any money?
A little leverage there.
Oh, just tiny bit.
A tiny bit.
Tiny bit. So that's a little known fact about my brother.
Yeah.
So anyway, so after that, he stopped betting sports.
I can't wait till you tell me the crazy stories.
I know. After that, he stopped betting sports, though. He was finally like,
betting sports.
You win.
That's way too frustrating. Betting something that's out of your control. I mean.
Well, he had a great analyst. I mean, it's just a math thing, and he had an amazing analyst, and they did really, really, really well at it because they had an amazing analyst.
I just find my friends who do that, they just they seem so miserable all the time.
Well, but they're not doing it like my brother was doing.
Yeah, he was
it,
doing
you
more
know?
scientifically.
Yeah, well, because my brother was never betting his own opinion.
Right.
You know, basically the analyst
He
would
wasn't
give
betting
him,
for his favorite team.
No, the analyst would give him the side and then give him strength of the side, and that would determine. So there, you know, he had levels of bets. There was, you know, big bet, medium bet, small bet.
Yeah.
And so he would be like, you know, the Cowboys, if you can get them at, you know, +7, and that's a very strong opinion, or, you know, so it was very scientifically done, and so it wasn't his own opinion. So there's no tilt then.
Yeah. Better stick to poker, I think.
Well, he's done very
Start
well with the
probably.
poker, so I think
Yeah.
in the end it worked out okay for him. It was probably
Yeah.
better than staying in the sports betting business.
I think so. And people can follow you, the real Annie Duke, or real Annie Duke.
I'm real Annie Duke.
How come you don't have Annie Duke? Is somebody
Someone
squatting?
squatted it.
Oh, I'll get that back for you.
You know what? Brian
I'll leave
Cooley
my
said
guy.
he'd get it back for me, and he didn't. He got me verified, though.
I got a guy.
If you've got a guy, I'd like to get
Oh,
Annie
I'm friends
Duke
with the
back.
CEO.
Oh, good. 'Cause,
I'll
yeah.
email him and say,
How
listen.
could you be friends with the CEO and not get on the suggested users list?
Well, that's part of the problem. I'm such good friends with the people who founded the company that it would look bad if they put me on it.
I think you should have a little discussion about not letting you cheat. Yeah. So anyway, Brian was like, "I'm going to see," but anyway, he did manage to get my account verified, so my account is
Verified is cool, but I mean, there's no other Annie Duke out there. The person's obviously squatting.
Yeah.
I got your friend from.
Actually, if you look at it, they've never tweeted even.
Yeah,
They're just squatting the account.
friend who you do Anti-Up for Africa with, Don Cheadle.
Yeah.
I met him at Commerce playing.
Right.
And we have some common friends, and I said, hey, you know, you should use Twitter for your thing. He goes, you know, I don't tweet or whatever. I said, yeah, whatever, you know. Then I look at my phone, it's in use.
Yeah.
So I emailed my friend. I said, hey, listen, I'm sitting here across from Don Cheadle. Can you get his account back for him? Da-da. And he said, yeah, sure. And he got me the information. I emailed it to Don Cheadle.
See, you're like all powerful.
No. I've got a couple of friends here.
When it comes to Twitter, you're all powerful.
I'm like what you are in terms of poker in the internet business. I have a little bit of that mojo.
Hey, you know what I was really
like you
mad
can get
about?
me into the good poker parties. I
That's
can get
true.
you in good internet parties.
You know what I was really tilted in, I think it was in July when they got rid of all the porn bots.
Yeah.
Because I was like, in one day I lost like 500 followers.
Right.
And I was like, who are you to say that I don't want those porn bots following
I'm big
me?
amongst pornographic
I was
robots.
I was huge among the porn bots.
Yeah.
And you took that away from me.
They're
Like, who are you to
they're
decide?
Lesbian porn bots,
Yeah.
very into you.
But recently I got a couple of tweets telling me about, like, you know, with pictures of people with the, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what? Whoa,
With the
what's that?
microphone.
With a microphone.
Yes.
Being like, and with some horrible tweet in there, I blocked
Yeah.
them. But
Yeah,
I was like, wait, you got
bit
rid
of
of
a
all my
free-for-all.
porn bots, but then now I'm getting messages about the thing. And
It's
I was like,
the microphone, yeah. It's interesting. They're figuring out how to deal with the spam problem. This is what
Yeah.
basically happens. And all these mediums, the cool people,
Yeah.
then the uncool people, and it becomes a mass thing, and then the marketers and spammers come and try to
Right.
destroy it, and then you have this sort of moment of truth. Either it gets so much spam that it collapses on itself,
Right.
or it becomes something worthwhile.
Right.
And they
Now,
fight
is
it.
Twitter going to have, like, is it going to have a life cycle like MySpace?
That's a good question. People have watched very intently what killed MySpace, like not innovating and not adding features. And Facebook and Twitter, as you notice, they keep rolling out a lot of interesting
Right, yeah,
features and
yeah.
keeping the software refreshed. And
Although I wish people would stop poking me.
the
why do
poking thing
people-
is pretty stupid
Why do people poke me?
because they don't have anything intelligent and charming to say.
I'm getting poked all the time. I'm like,
They're pretty,
cyber-
what it is, it's like intimidating. Like, oh, it's a celebrity. What am I supposed to do? Okay, I'll just poke them. It's like they can't ask you a question because they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I got to think of a good question for Annie Duke.
Yeah, I keep.
What was
getting
it like
poked.
to be on high
But yeah, I
stakes
guess
poker?
that's true. Like Facebook does keep trying to innovate, including deciding that they own all your content, which luckily went away.
But the people on high stakes poker, is that their money actually? Are they
Yes.
staked? So they're actually bringing their money, or they might be staked, or
Well, look,
Does the high-stakes poker people give
anybody
them
who's
the money?
playing, no, the high stakes poker people do not give them the money.
Right.
Anybody who's playing at any given time in a large cash game may or may not be staked. It doesn't have
Right.
anything to do, in particular, with high stakes poker. So
that just happens to be a high stakes game that's being recorded.
right, and particularly in that case because they can't wear logos. It's not like any online site's going to be like, look,
Oh,
I'm
they
going to
can't
stake
wear
you.
logos.
No, so it's not like they're going to be like,
It's a bummer. Why not?
it's just the policy of
Yeah.
GSN. So in that particular case, it's not like any online site's going to
So those
give
guys
them
are
the
really
money to
playing
play.
with 100, 200, 300,000.
Sure, it might be somebody's backing them.
Yeah, sure.
But they're really, that's absolutely 100% their money. So same thing on Poker After Dark.
Yeah.
Everybody's playing with their
But that
money.
seems like they have a lower amount.
It depends on
They have
the
that
thing.
tournament one where
well,
it's
they have the
20?
tournament one where it's 20, but now they've been doing cash games where the buy-ins. They have one cash game where the buy-in's 50,000, and another one where it's 100,000 now. You know, and obviously people can sail for more than 100 because they can.
Wow.
They can rebuy if they want to.
I should go on that and get wiped out really quick.
You should. You should go on that and
get just destroyed. Let me think about that.
Well, you don't know. You could. The beautiful thing about poker is you could win.
I could get lucky. It's a 2%
Yeah.
chance that I could beat non-professionals, or I could buy myself into the next
What
five
if you
World
went
Series
on
main
there?
event.
What if you went on there?
Yeah.
And you got all your money in, all your 50,000 in with kings against
Yeah.
aces, and you hit the king, and then you quit.
Then I would be like a legendary poker player.
You would, because what you can say is, look, you're all clearly so much better than me.
Right.
I've managed to have lightning strike,
And I'm smart enough to get up.
and I'm smart enough to leave.
Right.
See ya. And then they'd all be like, what the hell?
he can
What-
leave?
And everybody would be like, yay!
Yeah, I'd be like a hero. Yeah.
It would be awesome. You'd be like a legend.
No, I would like to win in a tournament first. I'd like to go pro. That's my dream.
You want to go pro?
Yeah, I would
Okay.
like to retire from doing all this internet stuff. Being CEO is exhausting.
It is. That's true.
It's exhausting.
That's
Responsible
true.
for every
you know
problem.
What? You know what helps with exhaustion? Trail mix.
My mixed nuts will be coming. I will have them set on every other day. I'll have FedEx
Nice.
here with
I
my
love it.
mixednuts.com.
I love it. I love it.
Well, thank you for being on the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're an awesome guest. Like,
I came like all the way to the west side for you too,
I know.
though, and you have no idea like how big
I
that
know
is.
it's a disaster to get over here from the other
From where I
side.
live, it's completely ridiculous. I
was
don't
gonna
even know
ask you where
why
you
you're
live, but I
on the
don't
west
understand
side.
Well, because it's beautiful over here. I came from New York. If you
It's
come
so
from New
much more
York, you need to be near
sterile,
the
though.
water.
But it's so much more sterile.
I know. It's a little weird to be like, live in the land of like just white people and
Yeah, I was in Brentwood
yeah.
to come over
Brentwood's
here.
bizarre.
Right. So I'm driving through like Brentwood, and it's like a little Connecticut
It's Connecticut.
village.
I live there. It's Connecticut.
I know.
It's Connecticut.
I know. My grandmother.
I grew up on the streets of Brooklyn. I live in
Check it
Brentwood
out.
right now.
So my mother grew up in Darien, so I'm very
It
familiar.
is like Darien. I
It
had a
is.
girlfriend from Darien.
Right.
And I went to the tennis club.
See?
This is what happened to me. I go to I have the girlfriend from Darien. She invites me to go meet her dad. We go, and we're going to go play tennis. So I said, great. So I put on my high tops, my basketball high tops. I got my black shirt on. I got my black.
You can't wear
and walk-
black.
No. So then I walk out of the bedroom with the clothes on. She's
And
like-
it's like,
and everybody's like, so she goes and she gives me a stack of white.
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm not wearing that. She's
Oh.
like, you can't. And then the girlfriend starts crying and this and that.
Yep.
So I put it on and I look like a total DB. I'm wearing like the shortest white shorts ever made.
Yep.
These white tennis shoes and a white, like, I look like I was from Less Than Zero or something.
Yep.
I never so ashamed of my life.
Yep.
Then went to the club and
I like the less than zero reference. That was very
it was
good.
it was pretty
That was
pathetic. I mean,
excellent.
I felt like James Spader.
No, it's what it was like, though.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so I'm driving through Brentwood, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like Connecticut.
It's quite lovely though, I have to say.
But it's so like, it's.
I'll
I
have
don't
you come
know.
to my home game and just take everybody's money.
You have to understand, like, I live over like
Silver
East,
Lake-ish or something like that?
ish. So
Ish, okay.
Well, do you know where Runyon Canyon is?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
I
so-
when I first came out here, I lived in Laurel Canyon for a little bit.
Oh, there you go.
So I used to walk up and down Runyon Canyon sometimes.
There you go. I live 3 miles east of Laurel Canyon, off of Mulholland.
Yeah.
So I'm on the way east side of Mulholland.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's basically
way-
a disaster if you come here. You'll be stuck in
right
traffic.
near Outpost.
Yeah, I know what you
Yeah. So that's got
That's
character.
a bit, I appreciate it.
It's character.
It's character, but I came from New York. I took the, R train.
Yeah, at this time of day, I have no
B-train.
good choice. If I take Santa Monica, it's a nightmare. If I take the 405, it's a nightmare. I could shoot
Right.
up to Mulholland, I guess.
You can go to Real Food Deli and just chill. And
Yeah, I could go to RFD.
Go get a little RFD and then call it a day. And
Yeah,
be
I'd
good.
have to chill till like 7 o'clock.
That would
though.
basically be it. Yeah, you're screwed either way.
No,
Well,
I'm
I
just
really
gonna, like,
appreciate-
and not only that, but I don't even have like my Bluetooth in my car right now because my nanny crashed my car 2 days ago.
I got in a car accident like 3 days ago. It's
Yeah.
really not fun.
Well, it's probably better at least when you crash your own car.
That is slightly better. No, actually, I didn't crash my own car. I was getting in my car in Beverly Hills.
Oh, and someone.
I opened the door like this much, and I hear like, and I turn around, there's like a plumbing van, boom, hits
Are you
the
serious?
door like this, and I'm holding the door, so it's like, just barely missed me.
Oh
And
my God.
This was like a Benz.
Did
It
they
just-
stop,
Boom.
though?
Yeah, they stopped like halfway down the block, and then came back, and were like, why were you opening your door? I was like, why are you 6 inches away from my car? You know?
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
was a little
Well,
nuts.
yeah. So anyway, so she called me up in a panic, and I said, you know what?
This is your assistant did it?
No, my nanny.
Oh, your nanny.
I said, there's.
Can't get mad at your nanny.
Well, what am I going to say? I said to her, I said, if I
You gotta
get
work
upset,
with her.
it doesn't make my car better. So why would I
This
get
is something
upset?
you have no control over. Why worry about
Exactly. I was like, it doesn't. If I yell at you, it doesn't make my car better.
it? No.
So I was like, all right, well,
And all it does is make her resent you.
right. So now you get it fixed.
Nanny's
whatever.
not easy to find. You know,
No,
right?
and I have a very good one. Very helpful with my 4 little.
I love your tattoo. So
It's
cool.
my children.
I know. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
Maud, Leo, Lucy, and Nellie. There
I'm
they all
thinking
are.
of. I love that, Lucy. That's great.
And I always tell them I love you infinity. So therefore,
you have it on your own. I'm thinking about getting a tattoo of my daughter's name on my body. I've never had a tattoo.
Well, but see, that's the thing that you can.
That would make sense to me.
This is the thing because
That would be the only
this
thing I
isn't
could
like
a
Khloe,
butterfly. No, not
It's
so
not
much.
like Khloe Kardashian getting Lamar Odom after a month on her. She tattooed it,
I know, it's insane.
and that's maybe a bad idea. But this
But you know what? Lamar Odom's a terrible player, and he doesn't show up, so I don't. He deserves her.
is he a bad player?
He's got great potential, and I think he's a bit of a stoner or something because he doesn't play up to his potential. Like
Oh, really?
Like one game, you're like, this guy's great, and the next game, next
Yeah,
three
I don't
games,
really
he doesn't show
follow the
up.
Lakers. You know, I'm New England.
Unfortunately, I'm a Knicks fan, which is just a disaster.
Oh,
it is
see,
nice to go to a Laker
Celtics.
game. Oh, you're a Celtic fan?
Yeah, Celtics and the Patriots. I come by it and the Sox. But I grew up in New Hampshire. I
Sorry
come by
about
it
the
naturally.
Sox.
It's not like I'm just like, oh, they're really good now.
Yankees
I
look
can
good
like
this year,
them
didn't they? Huh? 27.
all. You know what? There was a great poll. You'll enjoy this. So there was a poll that was in like the Boston Herald when the Yankees were up 3-1. Would you rather have a guarantee that the Patriots would win the Super Bowl,
Or the
or
Yankees
have
lose.
the Yankees lose from 3-1
90% Yankees lose.
Oh, it was like a sweep. Yeah.
Of course.
It was like, of course. The best thing ever was when when the Red Sox beat the Yankees after they were up 3-0,
Yeah.
and then nobody cared about the Rockies. It was like, who cares?
Yeah.
We beat the Yankees. We don't even care if we get the World Series.
It's
That's
a big
it.
deal to beat the Yankees.
It's a huge, well, particularly for Red Sox fans. Like, you can't really be a Red Sox fan if you have any love for Yankees at all.
No.
You should anyway, if you grew up in Brooklyn, you should like the Dodgers.
That was a little before my time. My dad was a Yankee fan, but my Irish side of the family, they were all Dodgers fans, who then became Met fans.
Oh, well, see, I like the Mets. See, the Mets is more like liking the Red Sox because it's kind of like the hard knock team.
They are. They are.
I lived in New
Hard
York
knock
in
with respect.
'86, though. And that was a very interesting thing because, of course, the Mets
Mets won.
against remember Bill Buckner with the ball between.
Yeah, between his legs, and then terrible. It was supposed to be over.
Yeah, there was some joke like he tried to commit suicide. So he stood out in the middle of the road, but the bus went between his legs.
Oh.
Some joke like that. I
Yeah.
don't know. It was horrible. Poor Bill Buckner, because he was a great player. He just should have. He was a little over
Terrible
the hill.
player.
But at any rate, in '86, it was the Mets versus the Sox. So, and I was in New York, so that was interesting for me.
Yeah. That's when you were at Columbia?
Yes, that was when. So now everybody knows I'm like ancient. I'm so old.
No. I went to Fordham right after that, so
Yeah.
not that much different.
There
Couple
you go.
years. Where do you play regularly? Do you play at places like Commerce or something like that?
Honestly, I don't play very much. I don't really play cash in casinos anymore. I play online. But I played, so I supported myself with cash game play from '94 till really about 2005 or so. But I always said that when I had enough money not to have to do that every day,
Right.
that I would be done.
Right.
And I'm done.
So now you just do big tournaments.
Well, so because the thing is, yeah, I play tournaments, and the reason why is not so much that it's not about my love of the game or not.
Right.
It's about, I have 4 children,
Sure.
and I have a busy life, and I want to have absolutely the maximum amount of time that I can with my kids. And cash game play takes up a tremendous amount of your time
yes.
if you're going to do that really seriously. Tournaments, you go, you might get knocked out the first
It's
day, and
finite.
you're back home. Right, it's very finite. So I really chose at that point to, as soon as I was able to focus my time on tournaments. And then what I do now is, like, my kids go to bed, and I'm like, oh, I got a couple hours, and I open up the
Sure.
computer, and I play online, and it allows me to be in the house, and I don't have to go anywhere. And, in the end, I have to choose my kids over whatever I'm doing. So
And your oldest kid is how old? I'm curious.
she's 14,
So
almost 15.
now she goes to school and they're like, wow, I need to do your mom. That's so cool. Your mom is like a polo
don't-
player. That's got to be so cool.
I don't think at the school that she goes to that necessarily is big cachet, to tell
Really?
you the truth. Yeah, she goes to a school called, well, actually, I don't want to say.
Don't
I'm
want
not
to
gonna
say, but anyway, private
So
school.
she goes to a school that is really, really incredible. So here's what's incredible about it. So my oldest daughter has a relatively mild case of ADHD.
Yeah.
Relatively mild in the sense that it doesn't need medication or anything like that, but she's got that kind of executive functioning, like organizational thing. She also happens to be profoundly gifted.
Right.
Believe it or not, there's a school in LA.
She'd make a great CEO.
Yeah, exactly. There's a school in LA that's specifically for profoundly gifted children who have executive functioning issues. So ADD, ADHD, that kind of thing.
Throw in
And
some
it's
Asperger's and she is going to be Bill Gates.
Well, this is the thing.
Yeah.
And what's really amazing about it is, like, when you drive up and you drop the kids off at school, it's like literally, and I'm not kidding, they have taken like the geekiest kid from every single school.
Yeah, every class
in
is
the
geekiest
whole,
kid.
like from Glendale, Santa Monica, everything like this. And they brought them all together into this school. And what's so amazing is obviously these kids are so smart and so creative and so interesting. And to adults, they're amazing. But when you stick them with middle schoolers, they're not so socially successful. You put them all together and they have all this social success. So my daughter went from a school where she was teased. I mean, she was teaching herself Japanese when she was in 11th grade during lunchtime. Like, that doesn't go over well with like other 11-year-olds, right? So, so now she's at this school where her social calendar is filled like every single weekend. Like, we don't see her. Like, she's so socially successful. And it's really amazing because I feel like with this group of kids very often, they have such bad social experiences in high school. And I know a lot of people like that because that's most poker players.
Yeah.
Right? Who had really bad experiences in high school, and very few of them were anywhere, where you'd call popular. And to know that there's this place where not only is there the academic side so incredibly nurtured because they're teaching to that group of kids, but also that they can have a really good social
They're basically
experience.
celebrating. They're saying, like, hey, this is a unique thing. Let's put it all together.
And it's amazing because the kids are so incredible. It's like, I mean, pretty much everybody that I'm really good friends with would have been done well in this school.
Yeah.
Like, because I think that as adults, those are the people who become, very, are really creative and really interesting and coming up with new and innovative ideas and really moving industry and moving business and moving
CEOs
technology.
I know, half of them ADHD, Asperger's, and they all, I mean, undiagnosed, of course. I mean, it wasn't diagnosed in our generation or before that, but they obviously have ADD, ADHD, Asperger's.
So you've got like the most creative forces. Like these are going to be the really the adults who are the creative forces of our.
They'll do innovative stuff.
Exactly.
They'll have the ability to focus on certain things and in a way and see things in a way that other people won't.
That won't, and now they get to nurture that from the time that they're in high school.
Right.
So that's why it's like.
So
such
when they
an
take
amazing,
out the Japanese books and lunch,
my
people are like,
biggest
"Oh,
sadness,
I did that in
keep saying,
fifth grade."
The thing for me is like I'm like so sad that my other 3 children don't have ADHD because I would love for them to go to this school, but they don't qualify.
You know, they're in some science fiction. They look at these things as a gift. William Gibson, et cetera, and take pills for it. There'll be a time when you can take it. And people, there's drug use in poker, right? I mean, you said that. I just can't imagine that, though. I mean, I've been at poker games where people, it's pretty clear that they're doing cocaine or something, and it's like, really?
It's not a good long-term solution, trust me.
No, I don't think so.
So I need to
Crystal
figure out.
meth?
I need
No.
to figure out how to give my other 3 kids ADHD so they can go to this school. I wish I had gone to this school when I was like, oh my God, I would have loved it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
It's
ADHD,
amazing.
totally underrated.
Well, I mean, and her friends are just so cool. Like, it's so cool when they all come to the house, and it's just really an awesome place. Like, I wish that everybody could learn under these circumstances.
Yeah, it's cool that you're into education.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I say,
You're a bit of a nerd. You're a poker nerd, so
honestly, like you should. I'm a huge geek.
Huge nerd. I mean, you're on. I mean, huge. I mean, you tweet at least 20 times a day.
Well, it depends. I remember the other day I tweeted, I was like, oh my God, I haven't tweeted today. It must be the end of days.
People get really freaked out if I don't tweet for a day.
Yep.
I took Thanksgiving off, and I was like,
that's basically what I did, and people were like,
people are like, oh my God, what happened? It's like, I'm eating turkey.
Right.
I'm playing Call of Duty with my nephew. I mean,
yeah, I'm a total geek. Like I'm so into the idea conferences, and my boyfriend's always laughing because I spend all my time watching things on TED.
Yeah, the TED Talks are incredible.
They're amazing.
You'll like TED. It's a good event.
Yeah. It's so anyway, I've always been actually my boyfriend it was right when my boyfriend and I first dated. He was sitting at dinner with me and my brother, and my brother and I were discussing this issue of you may have heard this before. So you have an envelope. Okay, so I have an envelope, and it's either got so its averages at $100, right? So but it's either got half X in it or 2X in it. So you can pick it. It's either got 50 in it or 200 in it, right? So I've got 2 envelopes, and one of them is half X, and one of them is 2X, right?
Okay.
So you pick an envelope, and I hand it to you. Is it correct for you, without looking in the envelope, is it correct for you to exchange envelopes? So that's the question, right? So it's actually a very complex math problem. I won't go into it here, but we're sitting at dinner, and we're talking about this problem, and it's a little Monty Hall-esque, you know?
Yeah.
But it depends on what kind of function you've worked out. So because you have this issue of, like, let's say that you...
So you've got either a 200 or I've got a 50, or it's vice versa.
Right.
And I have to decide if I want to trade with you.
Correct. So and you just have to decide without looking whether it's correct. So a lot of it has to do with what the limit on the function is. Is it a finite function? Is it infinite? Anyway, it's a very interesting math problem. You should think about it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
But anyway, so we're talking about this for the whole dinner. And I remember my boyfriend just walked away and he was like, "You guys
Really?
are so weird.
Can't talk about.
You are so weird.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you people?"
And neither of us know what's in the envelope.
No, neither of you know what's in the envelope.
So I either take the 50 that I have, or the 200 I have, or I trade it.
You trade it, right?
So it's like a coin toss. I'm comparing
Yes.
it to a coin toss.
Correct.
So do I either lift my hand up and see what I have, or do I
Right.
flip it over and see what I
Right.
have?
You could also, by the way, you can do it also that you look and should you change, because it doesn't matter, right? Because you don't know which side of the equation you're on,
Ah, yes.
right? So I can have you look in it too. It does change it a little bit. It changes the answer a tiny bit.
Fascinating.
If you look, you're supposed to change for sure, but
If you look, you're supposed to change for sure.
right.
Interesting.
But if you don't, there's questions about it. But the real answer is you can set up a function where what you say is it's actually a series where you flip a coin and you can go 1 to 3, right? And then if you flip the coin heads again, then the envelopes will have 3 and 9 in it. If you flip tails, it'll stop at 1 and 3. So I'm telling you that this is the way I now set up the envelopes, right? The 2 envelopes. Now, if I flip a coin heads again, then it will go 9 to 27, and so on to the limit of infinity, right? So obviously this is interesting because the probability is drastically decreasing,
Sure.
but the reward is much greater.
So what should you take? Yeah.
So what should you take? So now I hand you the envelope, you look in it, and you see it has 9 in it. Are you supposed to switch or not? Because obviously the probability is decreasing that it would actually go to. It's a much higher probability that the other other envelope has 3 in it versus 27, except that the reward is obviously so much greater. And when you set up that function, it becomes a very interesting question as well. This is really seriously.
This is seriously wonky stuff.
We've gotten
now
geeked out.
Now you've just totally.
We've gotten really, really
Now I'm
geeked
like,
out. But
wanna
that's
start
really
playing.
interesting if you think about that one where you're actually where I tell you how I set up what's in the envelopes.
Yeah.
That becomes very interesting because obviously as you go up, obviously you go 27 then to 60.
Now it starts getting really
right.
big money.
Yeah, then you get huge.
Also depends on what you're starting with and what you care about. If you're taking your personal bankroll into account.
Yeah, I guess you could, but let's talk about purity where money doesn't
I
matter.
know. Well, this is one of the things about when you go to the casino, like
But right,
if you
exactly.
play at a table that the stakes are meaningless to you, does your play get worse or better?
shouldn't,
It's gonna
by the way.
It shouldn't, but
It gets worse.
it gets much worse. I played at 1-3 and I'm like,
Yeah,
what
so
am I doing
now
here?
what do
I'm
you
so
do?
bored.
Like you open up the envelope, and
Yeah.
there's 27. You see 27 in it,
I'm flipping.
right? So you know that you can go to 9 or you can go to.
Let it roll, baby. Vegas.
Right.
Let's try to make some money here.
Okay.
But you take the money.
Right. So anyway, I think it's very.
You're
interesting.
already up, so take the money. Yeah.
Well, actually, in this case, I believe it's correct to switch because it's such a greater reward because you're doing this cubed function.
Right. That would make sense.
Right, so it
So you have
doesn't
a
matter
50%
because it's
chance of going up,
compensating.
but-
Exactly. So it's compensating for the conditional probability, the issue of the conditional
Exponential
probability.
reward for
exactly.
A coin toss.
Exactly.
You take the exponential reward.
You take the exponential reward in that case. So that sets it up a little more clearly. So
Yeah, then after you've done it 3 times, you're faced with the same exact math,
right.
which is exponential reward. So technically, if you did it 10 times in a row and you're now at trillions of dollars, you should keep going.
Something like that.
Right.
It's really interesting, those kinds of series. Anyway, so we were talking about that. My brother was just, and my boyfriend was just like, holy crap, you're totally the geekiest people that I've ever met in my life. Which I think, but to see me, people wouldn't suspect that I was having those dinner conversations about whatever.
No. But you're clearly very inquisitive and interesting. You're funny.
And a math geek.
You're a math geek. It's a good thing you found poker.
I know, because what else would I have done? It would have been horrible. You know, poker was
You would
a
have
way.
been a great criminal.
I would have been an excellent criminal, actually.
So I always tell people that if I wasn't a good CEO, I would be Lex Luthor.
I would be a very good criminal. I really would. It's true. Yeah, I should think about that. No.
Poison ivy.
But what poker allowed me to do was do math in a semi-cool way.
That basically is it. Yeah.
It's like math with some cachet.
And you were an English major, though.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. This is the secret thing about me. So when I was in high school, I finished at Calculus 2. I mean, I really was a math geek. But I my mother had said something to me, and you know, I don't think she admits this still, but she had said something to me when I was younger, which was like, nobody likes a smart girl. So I was always very embarrassed of the fact that I was so math and science oriented. So I decided I wanted to be like liberal artsy, fartsy, whatever.
Yeah.
So I majored
Tone it down.
in. I know.
Find a husband.
Exactly. So I majored
Perfect
at
message.
Columbia in English Lit. But I also did experimental psych, which is a softer version of science.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Right?
I was a psych major.
Yeah. So you understand experimental.
Yeah.
So I didn't do any clinical psych. It was all experimental. But
Experimentally, but you do have statistics in that, and you do
No, of
have
course.
to run
and
experiments.
I loved, and it really, at that time, it was really sort of the budding, it was the front edge of cognitive science,
Yes.
really, as we know it. So it was actually a very exciting time
It was
to
an
be in
interesting
that.
time, yeah.
So I was doing that. So I still was like servicing that, but I was like, I'm an English major.
It is a good combination, cognitive psychology, any psychology, plus math.
Right. So then when I
equals
went to
good at
graduate
poker.
school, right. So when I went to graduate school at UPenn, I gave up and I admitted it, and so I was getting my PhD in cognitive psychology, but and when I was in
Oh, you were going to go for your PhD in cognitive.
yeah.
Interesting. I was going to go for my PhD in industrial organizational.
Oh, you know, that was always very interesting to me. I'm not
Stevens
surprised that you ended
Institute.
up doing this. Yeah.
I was always interested in what motivated people. Motivation
Yeah.
was always my big thing. Like,
Yeah, see, and for me, I think that the thing, not surprisingly, is just decision-making decision-making, critical thinking skills are so interesting to me, and the way that you construct out trees and make proper decisions and biases,
Right.
it's just fascinating to me. And so I was doing, obviously, a lot of that when I was at getting my PhD, but, you know, and then obviously that's all that poker is. So it was actually a really cool fit for me, because it was all the math, it was like the cognitive science, it was game theory, like all that stuff.
see, what I
coming together.
found with playing at 2 in the morning on those weekend days is that there are people there, when I think about their motivation is to spend whatever money is in their pocket.
No joke.
Their motivation is not to win.
No.
Their motivation is they withdrew $5,000 and they have the band around it, and they
Thank
want that
God for
money
those
in play.
people.
And you know, it doesn't. They need to triple that money or lose it all. There is nothing in between.
Well, you know, it's a matter. You know, I think that I talked about this in the camp that we went to. It's like a matter of what is your goal, right?
Right.
Because you have to set the proper goals. For me, the proper goal is to make good decisions while I'm playing, because in the long run, that will play out well.
Yeah.
Other people, their goal is like to win as many pots as possible.
Yeah.
To lose all the money in their pocket, whatever it might be. But those are all very bad goals, right? So you have to actually set up the process properly. So
That is a good one. I have to switch mine. Mine is find the 2 or 3 weakest players at the table and just totally take advantage of them and try to destroy them. But I'm an aggressive guy. Like I
but
love the
that's
idea
okay
of dominating like some person who's on tilt. That just to me is like the fun of it.
But that's actually to say, I mean, when you're thinking about I want to make the best decisions possible, that you should understand that that's actually your top level goal, because
Right.
what you're saying is I want to find the 3 people that I can take the most advantage of,
Yes.
and then force them to make a lot of bad decisions against me. That's actually proper within the context of
Sure,
what I
the
say.
greater
you know?
goal,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's understanding. It's not I want to win the most money or anything.
Always
like
seems
that.
to me when I do that and when I properly identify the right people that I do well. And the second day of the
Yes.
World Series this year, when I sat down,
What was it like to be in the second day?
for me? Oh, you weren't in the second day.
No, I was sneezing. I was
Oh, yeah.
coughing and
The
sneezing.
second day was 3 people with over 100,000 at my table and me with 40, and it was just brutal. And I was just sitting there and I was like, which one of these players is the player that I'm better than?
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that exercise and it's nobody,
that sucks.
that's really bad.
That sucks.
I was like, wait a second. I don't think I'm
And I
clearly-
can't change tables.
Right, I clearly am not better than all these people. There's
Right.
not one person I feel like I could dominate this table. Wait a second. Oh, yes, it's the World Series of Poker. There's only 3,000 players left.
Yep. And
This is my
donkeys,
first one.
Yeah.
The donkey is I. You know, like, and
Yeah, that would suck. And then you can't change tables.
then you're short staffed.
That's how I felt at the Tournament of Champions. I was like, oh my God, look at the people at this table. How am I going to win?
And then you won.
And then I won, so there you go.
You're in a Duke. I'm not. I had ace 10. This is reasonable. I have like 20,000 chips of it. It's getting, blinds go
What
up.
are the blinds?
Blinds now are 1,500 to 3,000.
Oh, well, Jesus Christ. Okay, whatever.
So, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
done.
yes.
Stick a fork in me. And there's an ante and everything. And I'm cut off. Ace
Right.
10,
So you
suited.
moved in.
And so I move in because it's 3 callers. I think this is the perfect time to steal.
Yeah.
And it's my perfect time to push, whatever.
Yeah.
And don't you know it? The big blind has kings.
Well, there's nothing you can do about it. Hopefully you hit an
know.
ace.
But I have to say, this was the most frustrating moment of my life.
But why? You didn't do anything wrong.
I know. It doesn't make any sense. I feel better about it now that I talked to you a little bit. It's like 3 hours of therapy here. But
You didn't do anything wrong.
I didn't, but it is so and And I
Do you
think
remember when I went
so
through that
frustrating.
whole mathematical thing about if you push and then how often you win?
Right.
Because obviously he doesn't have to show up with kings. And then the beauty is that, so you win, you know, something like probably 85% of the time you just win the pot outright. So you collect all the blinds and antes, which is
And
great.
there were 3.
But then when you actually do get called, you're usually not in terrible shape. And if you look at your situation, you were only about a 2.5 to 1 dog there.
Yeah. Things that happen.
Yeah, it wasn't the worst thing
Flushes
that
can
ever happened to you.
happen,
So
yeah.
what? So you're still going to win like 30% of the time.
Yeah.
BFD.
I know. It was so frustrating for me.
But you made the right decision.
I know. There's something about the main
You know when you should be
event-
frustrated?
What?
You should be frustrated when some guy pushes in front of you and you look down at ace 10 and you're like, I only have 20,000 and I move in like the donkey that I am, and then you lose, and then you should be frustrated because you
Right.
played like an idiot.
Right. Because you knew that person had something great.
Yeah, and
Something
you were
better
just
than you.
obviously
Wait for another
panicking.
hand, yeah.
But here, you did the right thing.
I feel better now.
Yeah.
If that is the most frustrating moment of your life,
By the way, that's a pretty damn good
that's
life.
a pretty damn good life, is what I said. That's what my wife said to me. She's like, the fact that this is the most frustrating thing that ever happened to you means that you are the luckiest mother effer ever.
Yeah, there you go. See, all my frustration comes from people not doing things the way that I would have done them if I had time to do it myself. I think that makes me a bad person.
You're frustrated at the world for being incompetent. I feel your pain.
Yeah, it's terrible. But I feel like I always feel
Afghanistan,
like that
totally.
makes me a bad person.
No, it doesn't.
Because I'm like, I'll be like, I was an assistant for 4 years in college. It's the way that I worked myself through it. Like, and I was with the same person, and they were. I know how to do this.
Right.
And if I had time to do it myself, I would. So why aren't you doing this right? Like,
do
I
it
feel
the
like
right
an
way.
asshole. Yeah.
Yeah, we have been in Afghanistan for years, and they don't want us there. And so, yeah, let's send 30,000 more people.
Oh,
That'll solve the problem.
By the way, what happened to withdrawing the troops?
That was why I gave him my vote, and I was
Yes.
wondering the same thing on Twitter today. Didn't the headline was supposed to be, after I voted for Obama, United States withdraws from
That's why I voted for
nonsensical
him.
wars that we can't win?
Yes.
Not Obama sends 30,000 more troops and huge
Here's the
surge
thing.
triples the...
Okay. So I had a choice, obviously, as anybody who was voting not McCain.
Right.
Okay, because I don't think that there's any world in which putting Palin in that position makes sense.
No.
So I had a choice between Clinton and Obama,
Right.
as did anybody else who was voting not McCain.
Right.
And so as I'm going in to try to decide who I want to vote for in the primary, this is what I thought. I said, well, he's definitely saying that he's going to withdraw us from Iraq, and that's really important to me.
Change.
And on the Clinton side, I do feel like in the 80s, she was so gung-ho about reforming HMOs and all of this stuff, and now the HMOs are really some of her biggest campaign contributors, and I don't kind of like that. And I feel like even though she's pretty tied in with what's going on, and I think she'd probably be pretty effective, and God knows I loved Bill Clinton. Oh,
Right.
I would.
Great president.
Like, he's like my celebrity exemption.
Yeah.
So is he yours too?
Yeah,
That's hot.
absolutely.
That's
No,
hot.
I was going to say Hillary.
Yeah. So I felt like there were some things that had happened in terms of how politicized she had become and all these stuff that
Yeah.
I wasn't happy with. And here was this guy who said he was going to withdraw us
Right.
from Iraq.
Wasn't a sellout.
So I voted for
Independent,
him.
critical thinker, finally.
Thank you. So I voted for him. And now I feel like I should have voted for Clinton.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who feel a little duped.
Yeah, I feel like I should have voted for Clinton. At least I would have known what I was getting.
It was a known quantity. You didn't get duped, at least. She'd
Yeah.
say, like, yeah, we got to fight this war. There's reasons, and da-da-da.
Right.
All nonsense.
I mean, because there's that, and then there was the what the hell with the bailouts? What was that? I don't even understand what that was. Like,
Let's give more money to the people who destroyed the economy.
who made some of the
The worst decision makers ever.
Ever.
Give them more money.
You know what? The real
to solve
estate
the
market
problem.
is always going to keep going up.
I know, because it has historically.
Yes, it's never busted, ever,
I've won
or
the
go
last
down.
3 hands. Therefore, I'm on a rush. The next 3, I'm definitely going to
So let's create a product where we can sell equity in our hands.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we lost them?
I
Shit.
sucked out the last 3 hands. Therefore,
Yeah.
it's clear I'm going to suck out the last 3.
And then let's give money to the banks with no requirements whatsoever, really, in terms of them stimulating the economy so that they're not actually lending any money. And so what?
Yeah. Oh, and they're getting bonuses, by the way.
I know.
A year
It's
later.
just like, ugh.
Huge bonuses.
I know. So
Unemployment.
anyway,
Fine.
and then we're not out of Iraq. I'm so upset.
I'm voting for the Annie Duke ticket. We should be in charge.
By the way,
That'd be a good
no shit.
presidential ticket.
I'll tell you what.
Duke Calacanis.
That would be great.
We could solve a
Let's
lot of
do
problems.
It. We could solve a lot of problems. Well, first of all, we'd be out of Iraq for sure.
I would leave literally in a day because
would.
every day spent there, if you can't win, and there's no definition,
and we can't
they don't want
stabilize
you
it.
there. You have to leave.
And we can't
So
stabilize
obvious.
it. There's no
if
way
you could
for
go
us
back
to
in
stabilize the
time
area.
and end the Vietnam War any number of days early, you would.
Of
if you could
course.
say you could end it 5 days earlier,
Yep.
10 days earlier, we're going to look back on this moment in time and say, if we could have got to Afghanistan any days early, we would save a couple of kids' lives, a couple of $1 billion.
That's right.
People would stop hating. It's just nuts.
I know it.
So
I said,
sassy. I don't get it.
I'm so upset, and now
I'm
doing
really furious at Obama. Like he's
I
such
feel
a
very.
disappointment.
I feel like I seriously. I feel like betrayed. I feel like duped. I feel like he's like he duped me like
really
Russ
badly.
Hamilton or something.
Yes, it's
Right?
a really it's a major dupe.
It's a major dupe. You know, and in the end, he's just doing whatever, going with the flow. Like, I don't even know.
How could you say for like you get up there and be like
I'm
all
seriously,
about
like-
change and then
Right.
you change nothing,
Nothing.
not zero.
And I have to say, like I said before earlier, like I'm on complete tilt about the healthcare.
Yeah, right. Perfect timing. Really? Oh, we're in total complete debt. China owns our ass.
Well, you know,
no
I'm going to
jobs.
buy $1 million gazillion yacht tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I don't have the money, but whatever.
Yeah, sure. You should buy an island to go with
I
it.
should buy an island to go. Well, I need somewhere to dock it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. No, I'm so completely out of my mind. I'm so upset.
We live in a dying empire. On that note,
It's
I'd like to
horrible.
thank Annie Duke for being a wonderful, rambling guest. This has been one of the best shows ever. I'm absolutely sure people are going to go crazy for it. People are actually really pissed off about the Iraq war in the chat room.
Oh, good. 'Cause
Afghanistan,
seriously,
everything.
like I'm completely out of my mind.
My wife doesn't want to talk to me about it anymore because I get too angry about
You
it.
know what? I think my boyfriend feels the same way. We should just talk to each
Yeah,
other about
absolutely.
it.
I will DM you my feelings in the morning.
Yeah,
when I
because
look
I'm
at the Wall Street Journal cover.
I'm completely through the roof. I'm just so upset.
I mean, is almost well over 10% unemployment in this country, and we continue to fund a war that you cannot win. What about all the people who don't have jobs?
Well, but not only that, but oh, by the way, can I tell you another little bugaboo? Just
What?
while we're on it,
Yeah.
You know about the moratorium on foreclosures right now, right?
Right. So the
What the
real
hell?
estate is going to collapse even harder when they actually.
Why didn't they just allow the market to normalize back? You know,
Right.
when? Why just allow the foreclosures
There's
to
a
come
shadow
onto the market?
inventory as well.
I know.
They said that banks. This is a Wall Street Journal. This article.
Oh
a
no,
couple
I
months
know
ago,
because they don't want to show it.
They don't want to put these houses on the market, so they've kept a shadow inventory. There
Yeah.
could be a couple percentage points that if they did put on the market would create the largest amount of inventory ever of homes,
Yeah.
which would then collapse prices.
Yeah, I know.
So what do? They don't put the houses on the market.
I know. It's like a freaking shell game. I'm so upset about this, and they should have just allowed it to flood and then allow the market to normalize,
Yeah.
and whatever. Investors will go take advantage of the deals. People who have money will do it, and
There's a
they'll
lot of
fix it up and
airlines that
rent
should
it.
go out of business because they suck.
I know.
And then the airlines like Virgin and JetBlue that are good get more routes.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that was capitalism. Wasn't that what we bought into?
Somehow we brought it back around to that. I'm so upset. Like, you just have to let what is this? Why are you holding back these houses? Just allow them to go on the market and let it normalize.
Let it
'Cause
be a good deal for people.
What they're saying is that when that stuff comes on the market, California is going to go down another 15%, by the way.
Hmm.
So anybody out there who thinks that there's good deals to buy right now, you have to
gonna-
wait for this.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to lift it in August, and then they didn't because they were worried about the economy and they were focused on healthcare and all of this BS. And then they were supposed to lift it before Thanksgiving, but they didn't. And now they're like, well, we can't do it during the holidays. That would be terrible. Oh, these poor
Sure.
people with the foreclosed house during the holidays. So now we're looking at
These are
you
the
know,
people who bought houses that were like 1,000 times their salaries.
This is what I'm saying.
Didn't even look at the ratio.
I've never in my lifetime bought a house where I didn't put 25% down.
There are countries in the world where you have to put 50% down.
I know, which makes sense, by the way. Oh, okay, you can afford the house. That's good.
When I went to buy my house, the guy said, would you like a 20, 30, or 50-year mortgage? I said,
Oh,
I'm
I'm sorry,
38 years
excuse
old,
me?
50 years old. I'm going to be 98 paying this or 88 paying this? Really? 50-year mortgage.
There are 50-year mortgages?
50-year mortgage. I don't know if they still have them. During the boom, they said, just get a 50-year mortgage. You can afford a house that's 3 times as much, and don't worry about it because it's going to be variable it's going to be variable like after 5 years, but you'll have flipped your house by then and made a huge profit because houses double in price every 5-7 years. So don't worry about it. That's what literally the guy said
See,
to
and
me.
this is the thing, and here's the thing that upsets me, by the way, just on the decision-making standpoint. Okay, I know that we're still going on, but I have to say this.
Yes.
So everybody's like, the evil banks, the evil banks, the evil banks. And I'm like, okay, look, I understand that they were selling a bill of goods. Like, I get that. It was like the Brooklyn Bridge. But the
Right.
fact is that there are 2 parties in that transaction, and the person who chooses to buy the Brooklyn Bridge is just as culpable as the person selling the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah.
And there's no question for that. And the fact is that if I'm somebody making $60,000 a year, and someone says to me, "Hey, I've got a $500,000 house
Right.
that you can buy right now with no equity, no money down,
Right.
and it's only going to, it's fine now because it's going to be fixed for 3 years.
Right.
It's like a 3-year arm. This will
Yeah.
be great. But then in 3 years, you'll already have moved on because you'll have built in all this
Yeah.
equity and da da da." Why aren't these people saying, what are you, a freaking moron?
You think I'm stupid?
Do you think I'm dumb?
Of course.
I
Well,
can't afford that house.
And if it's variable.
And when did it become the case that Americans just have the right to live in a 3,000 square foot house? Like, I don't even get that. In the 20s, it was like a chicken in every pot. How did we get from a chicken in every pot to a 3,000 square foot house?
Hey, man, you need to have that home theater. And what are you supposed to do? Watch TV in your living room?
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's completely crazy. Like, I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I know people who make 1/10 the money that I do who live in a bigger house than I do. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it's retarded. I have 4 children, and I live in like 3,000 square feet by choice, by the way, because I want to be able to see my kids.
Right.
It's my choice.
They're not in the East Wing.
They're not. I don't have
North
an East
Wing.
Wing. Right. Exactly. I have an office, and then I've got bedrooms for everybody. Like, they're lucky that they have their own freaking bedrooms. They didn't used to. Like, I moved into a house there the other. But anyway, I'm so upset. And I just don't understand how they're all like the evil banks, the evil banks. It's all the bank's problem. It's all the bank's fault. No, it's not. It's also the people who bought the mortgage's fault because they weren't using good decisions. They weren't thinking about what can I afford and what is my long-term situation going to be if I buy this house.
And we need to reward those people now.
Now they're losing their house. They're all like, woe is me, feel sorry for. I don't feel sorry for you. I'm sorry. Like, you
Get an apartment.
Seriously, like rent.
Give them the keys back and go rent an apartment.
There is nothing in the American
What were you doing before
Constitution-
that?
Exactly.
They were probably renting a place. So go
I
back to it.
know. It's anyway.
Not to be cold-hearted, but I mean, for the people
But
who
it's
did,
not
if you
being
lost your job,
cold-hearted.
that's different. But if
It's
you
completely different.
Right.
If you chose to get into a house that there's
no
no
hope.
possibility
Impossible.
that you could have afforded,
yes,
then I'm sorry, but you made a really bad decision, and you have to live with the consequences of your decision. And by the way, stop socializing the result.
right.
How about that? Stop blaming it on everybody else and look
It
at
was
what
the
your-
bankers.
Yeah, look at what your culpability. But they told me the bad thing. They sold me.
I
They sold
didn't.
me a really
I
bad
didn't
product.
read the thing, and they told me it said something it didn't say. Oh, you really didn't read the agreement that you signed for the biggest purchase decision of your life. You didn't decide to read it.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that it was going to go up in 3 years.
Yeah. Oh, you know.
I didn't know. I had no
Fixed
idea.
and variable. You don't know those 2 words.
When you're buying a house.
Yeah. Fixed, variable.
Yeah. See, that's the thing.
Fixed, variable.
Right.
Don't know those words.
And so the fact is that you can't blame it 100% on the bankers.
There is a dictionary. You can look them up. I mean, fixed, everybody knows. Variable, if you don't know that word, you could look it up.
You could absolutely.
They
by
could change
way,
the word to
I'd argue
it
that
changes.
if you don't know the word variable,
You shouldn't own a home.
You shouldn't own a home.
I would agree. If you don't have those 2 words in your vocabulary, perhaps owning a home is not for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Perhaps a tent would be better. Tent or what do they
Right.
call that? An ERT? You'd have an ERT.
You could.
People who
That's
only
a
understand
good one.
fixed should have ERTs. And then people who understand
I agree
variable,
with
they
you.
could have.
I
something-
like that.
Yeah.
And
We
by
could
the
have
way,
an IQ test
and I would
before
argue
you get
that
loans.
to live in an ERT, you don't even need to know what it means.
No,
We'll just put you in the dirt house.
you did. You're done.
You're all good. They're very temperature normalized too, by the way, ERTs.
Perfectly good place to live.
You don't really need heating and cooling.
No,
They're pretty good.
they come with internet built in. Free Wi-Fi with every ERT. All right.
All right, there we go. Now we've
That's
ranted
it.
enough.
Now we've gone for almost 3 hours of show. It's 2 hours. It's literally almost 3 hours of show. At this point, we probably should launch a morning show and just do this every day. And we have a morning show, just
That would
railing
be
on-
fun. I would like that. And then we could rant more about Afghanistan
read
and
the
the
paper.
mortgage crisis.
Every
We could
day.
just read the. We could. We
You
just
open
be like,
the paper
"Can you
up and be
frickin-"
like, idiot,
I
idiot,
totally
idiot.
can't believe this.
Here's 3 ways to do this better. Okay.
That's right.
Thank you for being on the program.
Thank
you
you.
all for listening for hours and hours. And if you're listening to this on your iPod, I apologize. You're probably going to have to upgrade to a larger hard disk size because this is a huge file. We're going to have to break this into 3, I think. And we'll see you on Friday for This Week in Startups.
With this time, I go for mine. I get to shine. Now throw your hands